Somewhere along the way, we began to believe that peace comes from holding on to people, holding on to memories, holding on to what should have happened, what was lost, and what we hope will return. But Buddhist wisdom has always pointed in another direction. Much of our suffering begins when the hand refuses to open, when the heart says stay, even when life is already moving. The stories ahead are about people caught in that struggle, people clinging to love, anger, regret, pride, fear, and the past. People learning that peace does not always come from getting more. Sometimes it comes from releasing what is already hurting us. 20 stories, 20 lives, 20 chances to let go. We begin with a monk who believed that carrying pain was the same as being strong. Wherever you are right now, this is for you. The stone was not large at first. That was why he kept carrying it. He found it beside a narrow mountain path one morning after leaving the monastery. Smooth, grey, heavy enough to notice, but not heavy enough to stop him. He picked it up. No one told him to. No teacher had given him an instruction. He simply closed his fingers around it and continued walking. There are many things in life that begin this way, small enough to carry, a memory, a disappointment, something someone said, a mistake we made years ago, a person who left without explaining why. At first, the weight seems manageable, so we keep it. The monk walked through villages with the stone in his hand. He crossed small bridges. He climbed hills. He slept beneath trees. Whenever people asked why he carried it, he gave a different answer. Sometimes he said the stone reminded him to be disciplined. Sometimes he said it taught him patience. Sometimes he said suffering was part of the path. And sometimes he said nothing at all, but the truth was simpler. He had become afraid to put it down. This is something the Buddhist teachings understand very well. We do not only cling to beautiful things, we cling to painful things too. We hold anger because it proves that something wrong happened. We hold grief because letting go can feel like betrayal. We hold regret because punishment feels more honest than forgiveness. We hold old stories because without them we are not sure who we are. The monk did not understand this yet. He only knew that the stone had become part of his day. After many weeks, his fingers began to ache. His shoulder became stiff. At night, he placed the stone beside his sleeping mat, but before closing his eyes, he would touch it to make sure it was still there. One afternoon, he arrived at another monastery. An old teacher was sweeping dry leaves from the courtyard. The monk bowed. The teacher looked at his hand. "What are you carrying?" "A stone." "I can see that." The monk waited. The teacher asked, "Why?" The monk began giving the answers he had given everyone else. Discipline, patience, practice, suffering. The old teacher listened until he finished. Then he asked one question. "Does the stone know you are carrying it?" The monk looked confused. "No." "Does the mountain need you to carry it?" "No." "Does the road become better because you carry it?" "No." The teacher leaned on his broom. "Then who is this suffering for?" The monk had no answer. Sometimes one simple question reaches a place that 100 teachings cannot reach. The monk looked down at the stone. For the first time, he did not see an object of practice. He saw weight, nothing more, just weight. The teacher said, "Put it down." The monk almost laughed. It sounded too easy. He had carried it across valleys. He had suffered because of it. He had built meaning around it. Surely something that had caused so much pain required some great ceremony before it could be released. But the teacher only repeated himself, "Put it down." The monk opened his hand. The stone fell into the dust. That was all. No thunder, no light, no voice from the sky. The world did not change, but his body did. His fingers slowly opened. His shoulder dropped. He felt how tired he had been, only because the tiredness was finally leaving. And then something unexpected happened. He began to cry, not because he missed the stone, because he suddenly understood how long he had been hurting himself while calling it practice. We do this. We carry what has already happened and call it loyalty. We carry resentment and call it justice. We carry guilt and call it responsibility. We carry fear and call it preparation. The Buddha taught that attachment creates suffering, but attachment does not always look like greed. Sometimes attachment looks like refusing to stop hurting. Sometimes we become loyal to the wound. We say, if I let this go, then what happened did not matter. But letting go does not mean it did not matter. It means you no longer need to bleed every day to prove that it happened. The old teacher sat beside the monk. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, the monk asked, "What if I pick it up again?" The teacher smiled. "Then notice that you picked it up. And then? Put it down again." This is the part many people miss. Letting go is not always one great moment. Sometimes it is a practice repeated 1,000 times. The memory returns. Put it down. The anger returns. Put it down. The old conversation begins again in your head. Notice it. Put it down. Someone who hurt you appears in a dream. Notice what the mind is holding. Put it down. Buddhist. Practice is not pretending that pain never existed. It is learning that pain does not need to become a permanent possession. Everything changes. Bodies change. Relationships change. Feelings change. Even the strongest grief changes shape when we stop feeding it every day. The monk remained at the monastery for several nights. Each morning he walked past the stone. The first morning he wanted to pick it up. The second morning he still looked at it. By the third morning it was simply part of the road. Just another stone. And that may be one of the quietest forms of freedom. The thing that once controlled your whole attention becomes something you can walk past. We all carry stones. Some have names, some have faces, some have been with us so long that we mistake their weight for our identity. Maybe yours is an old betrayal. Maybe it is the life you thought you would have by now. Maybe it is the person you cannot stop missing. Maybe it is one mistake you keep returning to, as if suffering over it long enough will somehow change the past. It will not. The past does not become different because we punish ourselves in the present. The stone does not become lighter because we carry it farther. At some point, the question becomes very simple. How long do you want to keep holding what is hurting you? The monk left the monastery with an empty hand, and for the first time in many weeks, he noticed the wind. He noticed birds moving through the trees. He noticed how much of life had been happening while his attention was fixed on what he refused to release. But farther down the road, he met another man carrying something much heavier than a stone. The strange thing was that nothing could be seen on his back. He was carrying yesterday, and unlike the monk, he did not yet know that the past had become his burden. The monk had finally put down the stone. But farther along the road, he met a traveler carrying something no one could see. The man walked slowly. His back was bent. His face looked tired, yet he carried no bag, no basket, no bundle. Nothing was tied across his shoulders. Still, every step looked heavy. The monk watched him for a while before asking, "What are you carrying?" The traveler gave a small laugh. "Nothing." But his voice did not sound like the voice of a man carrying nothing. The monk knew this kind of weight. He had carried it too, not in his hands, inside himself. The traveler had been walking for many years. He moved from village to village looking for work, food, and somewhere to sleep. But wherever he went, yesterday went with him. Years earlier, he had lived with his younger brother. They were close. They worked together. They ate together. They spoke about everything. Then, one evening, they argued. It began over something small, money. It usually does not matter what begins an argument. What matters is what comes after. One angry sentence became another. The brother said something cruel. The traveler answered with something worse. Both men knew where the other was weakest, and both chose to strike there. Before the night ended, his brother left the house. The traveler shouted after him, "Go then, I do not care if you ever come back." His brother did not come back. 3 days later, word came that he had died while crossing a flooded river. From that day, the traveler carried one sentence everywhere: "I do not care if you ever come back." He remembered his own voice saying it. He remembered the door closing. He remembered the silence afterward. For years he tried to change that night inside his mind. If only I had stopped speaking. If only I had apologized. If only I had followed him. If only I had said something different. This is how the mind tries to bargain with the past. It returns to an old moment again and again, hoping that repetition will create another ending. But yesterday does not reopen because we knock on its door. The traveler knew this. Still, he returned. Every morning, every night, every quiet moment. He carried the argument. He carried the river. He carried the guilt. He carried the brother who was no longer there. The monk and the traveler walked together until evening. They stopped beneath a large tree. The traveler sat down heavily. The monk asked, "How long have you been carrying your brother?" The traveler became angry. "I am not carrying him." The monk looked at him. "You are carrying the last moment you had with him." The traveler said nothing. The monk continued, "And because you cannot change that moment, you punish today for what happened yesterday." The traveler looked away. That hurt. Truth often does. He said, "What should I do? Forget him?" "No." "Pretend I did nothing wrong?" "No." "Then what?" The monk picked up a dry leaf from the ground. "Hold this." The traveler took it. The monk asked, "Is this leaf yesterday?" "No." "Can you make it green again?" "No." "Can you return it to the branch?" "No." "Then why crush it in your hand?" The traveler looked down. Without noticing, he had tightened his fist around the leaf. When he opened his hand, it was broken into pieces. The monk said, "This is what you are doing to yourself." The traveler began to cry. Quietly at first, then deeply. The kind of crying that comes when a person has been strong for too long. He said, "I told him I did not care." "But did you care?" "Yes." "Then your last sentence was not the whole truth of your life together." The traveler looked at him. This had never occurred to him. One terrible moment had swallowed every good moment before it. Years of brotherhood had disappeared behind one night of anger. This is another way we hold on. We take one painful moment and make it larger than everything else. One failure becomes our whole identity. One betrayal becomes our whole story. One goodbye becomes the only memory we allow ourselves to keep. The Buddha taught that everything is changing. Not only the world outside us, the stories inside us can change too. The past cannot be changed, but our relationship with the past can. The traveler could not return to that house. He could not stop his brother from leaving. He could not calm the river, but he could stop turning one sentence into a life sentence. The monk told him, "Regret can teach you, but when the lesson has been learned, carrying the punishment serves no one." The traveler asked, "How do I know I have learned?" "Would you speak those words again?" "No." "Would you walk away from anger the same way?" "No." "Would you tell someone you love them before pride makes you silent?" "Yes." "Then yesterday has already taught you." The traveler sat with this. For the first time, his regret had somewhere to go. Not backward, forward. That is one of the deepest Buddhist lessons about suffering. We cannot always remove what happened, but we can stop using what happened to destroy what is happening now. The traveler looked at the pieces of dry leaf in his palm. Then he opened his hand. The wind carried them away. He watched until they disappeared. His brother was still gone. The past was still the past. Nothing outside him had changed, but he stood differently. His back looked less bent. The monk noticed. So did the traveler. Sometimes peace begins before life becomes easy. Sometimes it begins the moment we stop asking yesterday to become something it can never be. They continued walking the next morning. Near a small village, they stopped beside a well. There, an old woman was washing a cup that had been broken and repaired many times. She washed it carefully, too carefully, as if the cup was not just a cup, as if losing it would mean losing someone all over again. The traveler understood immediately. He had carried yesterday in his mind. She was holding hers in her hands. The traveler had carried yesterday in his mind. The old woman beside the well carried hers in her hands. The cup was small, brown clay. A thin crack ran from the rim almost to the bottom. It had been repaired more than once. The woman washed it slowly, turning it beneath the water as if one careless movement might destroy something precious. The monk watched her. So did the traveler. There was something in the way she held that cup, not like an object, like a memory. The monk asked, "Is that cup important to you?" The woman looked up. "My husband made it." Her answer was simple, but everything behind it was not. Her husband had been a potter. For nearly 40 years he had made bowls, cups, jars and lamps in a small workshop behind their house. His hands were always covered in clay. Even after washing, there seemed to be a little earth left beneath his fingernails. Every morning he drank tea from this cup. Every evening he placed it beside the same window. Then he became sick. His hands became weak. The wheel stopped turning, and one winter morning he died. After his death, the woman kept everything exactly as he had left it. His sandals remained by the door. His old cloth stayed beside the pottery wheel. His tools were arranged on the table, and every morning she poured tea into his cup. She did not drink from it. She simply placed it beside the window, as if he might return. Grief can do this. It can make the heart build a small room where time is not allowed to move. We know the person is gone, but some part of us keeps preparing for their return. Some part keeps the chair empty, keeps the clothes, keeps the message, keeps the cup. The first crack appeared when the woman dropped it months after her husband died. She screamed, not because a cup had broken, because something inside her believed she was losing him again. She took it to a potter and had it repaired. Later, another crack appeared. She repaired that too, then another. Each time the cup became weaker, and each time she became more frightened. The traveler understood. He had spent years protecting one painful memory of his brother. The woman was doing the same thing with clay. The monk asked, "What would happen if the cup broke completely?" The woman looked almost offended. "I would lose the last thing I have of him." The monk looked toward the old workshop. "Did he make only one cup?" "No." "Did he give you only one memory?" The woman became quiet. "No." "Then why have you placed your whole marriage inside this one piece of clay?" Her eyes filled with tears, because that was exactly what she had done. We often do this after loss. We attach the whole person to one object: a ring, a photograph, a shirt, a voice recording, a chair, a letter. There is nothing wrong with keeping these things. Love gives objects meaning. But suffering begins when we believe the object must remain unchanged for the love to remain real. The cup had become more than a memory. It had become a prison. Every day she feared dropping it. Every visitor made her nervous. Every new crack felt like another death. She was no longer remembering her husband with love. She was guarding against losing him again. The monk sat beside her. He said, "You are trying to protect something that cannot be protected from change." The woman looked at the crack. Buddhism calls this impermanence. Everything that comes together will one day come apart. Every cup, every house, every body, every relationship in the form we know it. This is not a punishment, it is the nature of life. The flower falls because it bloomed. The candle finishes because it burned. The body changes because it lived. We suffer when we demand that what changes must remain. The woman whispered, "So I should throw it away?" "No, then what should I do?" "Hold it like something that can break." She looked confused. The monk continued, "Love it without asking it to stay forever." That sentence entered her quietly. For years she had thought peace meant protecting the cup from change. Now she began to understand that peace might mean allowing change without believing love had disappeared. She carried the cup back to her house. The monk and traveler followed. She entered the workshop she had barely touched since her husband died. Dust covered the wheel. Sunlight came through the narrow window. For the first time in years, she moved his tools, not to throw them away, to clean the room. She opened the windows. She folded his cloth. She moved his sandals from beside the door, and then she did something she had not done since he died. She poured tea into the cup, for herself. She sat where he used to sit, and she drank. Halfway through, the crack widened. A thin line of tea ran across her fingers. She looked down. The traveler held his breath. The woman did not scream. She smiled through tears. Then she whispered, "You were a good cup." The monk smiled too. It sounds like a small moment. It was not. Something had opened. The cup had not yet broken, but she no longer needed it to survive forever. This is what letting go often means. Not throwing everything away, not becoming cold, not forgetting. It means allowing what we love to be temporary. It means understanding that the end of a form is not the end of what it gave us. Her husband was not inside the clay. He was in the years they had shared, in the kindness he had shown, in the life they had built, in the hands she had watched shape hundreds of ordinary things from earth. Nothing could take that away. The next morning, the monk and traveler continued on. The woman stood at her doorway, holding the cracked cup. This time, her hands were relaxed. Beyond the village, dark clouds gathered over the fields. They soon came upon a farmer standing beside ruined crops. The storm had passed weeks before, but in the farmer's heart it was still raining. He had survived the storm. What he could not forgive was that it had happened at all, and that anger had become the next thing refusing to let go. The woman had been afraid that change would take her husband away a second time. The farmer had another problem. He believed life had personally wronged him. When the monk and traveler reached his field, the sky was clear. The storm was gone, but the field still carried its marks. Broken stalks lay across the earth. One side of the fence had fallen. Mud had dried into deep cracks. The farmer stood in the middle of it all with his arms crossed. He was staring at the sky, not looking, staring, as if waiting for an apology. The monk greeted him. The farmer barely answered. "What happened here?" the traveler asked. "A storm." "When?" 23 days ago." The traveler looked around. 23 days was enough time to begin clearing the field, but almost nothing had been touched. The monk asked, "Why have you not replanted?" The farmer's jaw tightened. "Because the rain destroyed everything." "That explains what happened." The monk looked around. "It does not explain why nothing has happened since." The farmer turned sharply toward him. "You think I did this?" "No." "You think I asked for the storm?" "No. I worked for months." "I believe you." I planted every seed myself." The monk nodded. "And now it is gone." The farmer waited for more. The monk said nothing. Sometimes people do not want answers. They want the world to admit that it was unfair. The farmer had lost most of his season's crop in one night. He had watched wind tear through the field while rain flooded the rows. By morning, months of work had been flattened. At first, his anger made sense. Anger often arrives when something precious is taken. But days passed. The sky cleared. Neighbors repaired their fields. Some planted again. The farmer did not. Every morning, he walked outside and looked at the damage. Then he told himself the same story. "This should not have happened to me." He repeated it until the storm became larger than the storm itself. This is how suffering grows. There is the pain of what happened, and then there is the pain of arguing with the fact that it happened. Buddhist teaching often speaks about two arrows. The first arrow is the pain life gives us: illness, loss, failure, rejection, age, death. We cannot always stop the first arrow. The second arrow is what the mind adds. Why me? This cannot be happening. Life has betrayed me. I will never recover. I refuse to accept this. The storm was the farmer's first arrow. His refusal to accept the storm was the second. And every morning he shot that second arrow into himself again. The monk bent down and picked up a broken stalk. "Are you angry with this?" "No." "The rain?" "Yes." "The wind?" "Yes." "The clouds?" "Yes." The monk looked toward the empty blue sky. Where should they come to apologize? The traveler almost smiled. The farmer did not. "This is not funny. I am not laughing." The monk placed the broken stalk down. "But you are waiting for something that cannot happen." The farmer looked away. "What am I supposed to do? Say the storm was good?" "No." "Pretend I did not lose anything?" "No." "Then what does acceptance mean?" The monk answered, "It means stopping the argument with what has already happened." That was harder than it sounded. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People think it means approval. It does not. You can accept that someone hurt you without saying the hurt was right. You can accept that a relationship ended without being happy that it ended. You can accept illness without wanting illness. Acceptance simply means seeing reality without demanding that reality become yesterday. The farmer sat on a broken piece of fence. "I had plans for this harvest. Of course. My family needed it. Yes. I did everything right." "Maybe you did. Then why did this happen?" The monk looked at the field. "Because storms do not ask who deserves them." That answer hurt, but it was true. Much of life is not personal. Rain does not study our goodness before falling. Age does not ask whether we are ready. Change does not wait for permission. The Buddha taught that suffering comes partly from wanting life to obey conditions it has never promised to obey. We say, if I am good, nothing terrible should happen. If I love someone, they should stay. If I work hard, I should succeed. If I plan carefully, nothing should go wrong. These hopes are human, but life does not sign that agreement. The farmer looked at the ruined field for a long time. Then the monk pointed to a small green shoot near his foot. It had pushed through the mud. The storm had not killed everything. The farmer stared at it. He had walked past it every day. Anger had made him blind to what was still alive. This happens to us too. We become so focused on what was taken that we stop seeing what remains. The farmer still had land. He still had hands. He still had some seed stored away. He still had neighbors willing to help. The season was damaged. His life was not finished. He stood up. Without saying anything, he lifted the broken piece of fence. The traveler took the other side. The monk began clearing fallen branches. By afternoon, the field looked different. Not restored, but moving. That is often enough. Healing rarely begins with everything becoming right. It begins with movement. One branch cleared, one seed planted. One morning when we stop repeating the same complaint. The storm had already taken the farmer's crop. He finally understood that his anger had been giving the storm something else, his days. He could not get the crop back, but he did not have to lose the rest of the season to what was already gone. At sunset, he pressed the first new seed into the soil. He did not know if it would grow. He planted it anyway. That is another form of letting go. We stop demanding a guarantee before we begin again. The monk and traveler left the farm the next morning. Behind them, the farmer was already working. Ahead, the road led toward a busy market town. There they found a merchant sitting inside a shop filled with goods, silk, spices, coins, boxes stacked to the ceiling. He had more than most people in the village, yet his face looked empty. On the table in front of him was a book. Every page contained numbers, not what he still owned, only what he had lost. The farmer had been angry at the storm. The merchant had turned loss into a daily ritual, and every night he counted it again. The farmer began planting again because he finally stopped asking the storm to return his old field. The merchant in the next town had not learned this. He was surrounded by what remained, but he could see only what was gone. His shop stood at the busiest corner of the market. People came and went all day. There were jars of spices on wooden shelves, folded cloth from distant villages, tea, oil, rice, copper bowls, small boxes of coins. From the outside, it looked like a successful life. But every evening after the market closed, the merchant locked the door, lit one lamp, and opened a black book. Then he counted his losses. There had been many. A cart stolen 3 years earlier. A shipment ruined by rain. Money lent to a cousin who never returned it. A business partner who cheated him. A bag of silver misplaced during a journey. A customer who had disappeared without paying. The merchant had written each loss carefully. Date, amount, name, reason. He knew the total by heart. Still, he added it again every night. The monk and traveler entered his shop before sunset. The merchant sold them rice and tea. Then the traveler noticed the book. "What is that?" "My account." The monk looked at the open page. "This is not an account of what you have." The merchant frowned. "It is an account of what life has taken from me." The monk looked around the shop. "And where is the book for what life has given you?" The merchant laughed. There would be no point. That answer told the monk almost everything. The merchant had once been poor, very poor. As a child, he had slept beside his mother in a room with a leaking roof. Some nights there was little food. He promised himself that when he became older, he would never feel that helpless again. So he worked, he saved, he traded. He became careful with every coin. For many years, that care helped him. Then something changed. Care became fear. Fear became attachment. Attachment became counting. Every loss began to feel like proof that poverty was coming back for him. It did not matter how much he owned. The missing coin always felt more important than the 100 coins still in his box. This is one of the strange habits of the human mind. We can receive 10 acts of kindness and spend the night thinking about one insult. We can have years of good health and feel betrayed by one illness. We can be loved by many people and become obsessed with the one person who rejected us. What is missing becomes enormous. What remains becomes invisible. The monk asked the merchant, "When did you last count what you still have?" "I know what I have." "Do you?" The merchant pointed at shelves. "Of course." The monk took an empty bowl from the table. He placed 10 beans inside it. Then he removed one. "How many are left?" 9. The monk stared at the single bean in his hand. "If I spend all night staring at this one, how many will be left tomorrow?" 9. "And if I spend all night being grateful for the 9? 9. The merchant looked impatient. "So what is your point?" "The number does not change." The monk placed the bean down. but the life of the person looking at the bowl does. The merchant became quiet. This is the difference between loss and attachment to loss. Loss is real. We should not pretend otherwise. Money disappears, people leave, opportunities pass, bodies weaken, things break. But attachment keeps the missing thing present long after it has gone. The merchant had lost money once. Then he lost peace every night remembering the money. The first loss had happened years earlier. The second was happening now, again and again. The traveler understood. He had done the same with his brother. The farmer had done it with the storm. The woman had done it with the cup. Different objects, same hand refusing to open. The merchant closed the black book. I worked for all of this. Yes. So I should not care if I lose it? That is not what I said. The monk looked around. Care for what is in your hands, but do not make your peace depend on your hands staying full. The merchant looked at his hands. This was difficult. Buddhist teaching does not say we cannot own things. It asks us to notice when things begin to own us. You can have money without building your identity around money. You can enjoy comfort without believing comfort must never end. You can love what you have while remembering that none of it came with a promise of permanence. Everything is borrowed from change. The house, the body, the people around the table, even our own breath. We suffer when we confuse temporary possession with permanent ownership. The merchant asked, "What should I do with this book?" The monk answered, "Read it once." The merchant opened it again. The monk said, "Now tell me what each loss taught you." The stolen cart taught him to hire better guards. The ruined shipment taught him to cover goods before monsoon season. The dishonest partner taught him to choose business companions carefully. The unpaid loan taught him not to lend what he could not afford to lose. One by one, the losses changed. They were no longer only wounds. Some had become teachers. The merchant had already paid for these lessons. His problem was that he kept paying. The monk said, "If the lesson remains, you do not need to keep the suffering too." The merchant slowly closed the book. Then he took another sheet of paper. For the first time in years, he began writing a different account. His health, his shop, his sister, 2 loyal workers, a roof that did not leak, enough rice, a friend who had stood beside him through difficult years. By the time he finished, his eyes were wet. None of these things were new. He had simply stopped seeing them. That night, he did not add his losses. He put the black book away, not because the losses were unreal, because they no longer deserved to be the only story he told himself. Before the monk and traveler left the next morning, the merchant handed them food for the road. He almost asked for payment. Then he smiled and gave it freely. Something inside him had loosened. They walked beyond the market until the noise disappeared. Near midday, they reached a quiet roadside shrine. An old man sat there alone. He had been returning to the same place for years. He was not waiting for money. He was not waiting for someone who had died. He was waiting for 2 words from a living person. "I'm sorry." And because those words had never come, he had placed his peace in someone else's mouth. The merchant had spent years counting what was gone. The old man beside the shrine was waiting for something that had never arrived. 2 words. "I'm sorry." He came to the same tree every afternoon. He sat beneath it. He watched the road. People passed. Children ran by. Farmers returned from their fields. Travelers stopped for water. But the person he wanted never came. The monk and the traveler noticed him from a distance. There was something about waiting that changes the body. The old man leaned forward whenever footsteps approached. Then he leaned back when he saw the wrong face. The monk asked, "Who are you waiting for?" "My son." "Is he traveling?" "No." "Does he live far away?" "Not very far." The monk sat beside him. "Then why do you wait here?" The old man looked down the road. "Because one day he will come and apologize." The story had begun 7 years earlier. The old man had owned a small piece of land. He had worked it most of his life. When his wife died, his eldest son began helping him. At first, they worked well together. Then money became difficult. The son wanted to sell part of the land and open a shop. The father refused. The land had belonged to his own father, and his father before him. "It stays in the family," the old man said. The son argued that land was only useful if it could help the living. The father said the son had no respect. The son said the father cared more about dead people than his own family. Then the argument became cruel. Both men said things they had carried silently for years. The father accused his son of greed. The son accused his father of controlling everyone around him. Finally, the son shouted, "I am done living under your anger." Then he left. Weeks passed, months. The son moved to another village. The old man waited for him to return. At first he expected an apology within days, then within weeks, then by the next festival, then by the next year. 7 years passed. The old man still waited. The traveler asked, "Have you spoken to your son since?" "No." "Have you gone to him?" "No." "Why?" "Because he was wrong." The monk asked, "Only him?" The old man looked irritated. "He insulted his father." "Did you insult your son?" The old man became quiet. "That is different. This is one of the ways pride protects pain. We make our own wound sacred. We study what the other person did. We remember every word. We become experts in their failure. But when the mind turns toward our own part, we suddenly become less interested." The old man said he should come first. The monk nodded. "And if he never does?" The old man looked down the road again. "He will. And if he does not?" The question sat between them. This is the danger of attaching peace to another person's action. We say, "I will be free," when they explain. "I will move on," when they admit what they did. "I will stop being angry," when they understand my pain. "I will forgive," when they apologize. Without noticing, we hand someone else the key to our inner life. Then we wait. The other person may be sleeping peacefully. We are the ones under the tree. The Buddha taught that anger is suffering first for the person carrying it. This does not mean harmful actions do not matter. It does not mean people should never be responsible. It means our peace cannot safely depend on another person becoming who we want them to become. The monk picked up a small stick. He drew a line in the dirt. "Your son stands here." He drew another line. "You stand here." Between them was empty ground. "What are you waiting for?" "For him to cross." The monk looked at the old man. "Could you cross?" The old man's face hardened. "Why should I?" The monk answered, "Because you are the one who wants peace." That hurt. The old man stared at the ground. For 7 years he had believed going first would mean losing. Losing dignity, losing authority. Admitting his son was right. But perhaps going first did not mean any of those things. Perhaps it simply meant refusing to waste another year. The traveler asked, "Do you miss him?" The old man's eyes changed. "Yes." "More than you need the apology?" The old man did not answer. Sometimes silence is the first honest answer. The monk said, "An apology is a beautiful thing when it comes freely. But demanding one before you allow yourself to heal turns healing into a bargain." The old man looked toward the village where his son lived. "What if he still thinks I was wrong?" "He may." "What if he refuses to speak?" "He may." "What if I go and nothing changes?" "Then you will know you stopped waiting." The next morning, the old man did something he had not done for 7 years. He did not sit beneath the tree. He walked. The monk and traveler went with him for part of the road. Then the old man asked to continue alone. Near sunset, they saw him returning. He was crying. The traveler feared the meeting had gone badly. "What happened?" The old man wiped his face. "My son opened the door." "And?" "I said I was sorry." The traveler smiled. "Did he apologize too?" The old man paused. "Not yet." "Then why are you smiling?" "Because I thought those were the words I needed to hear." He looked back toward the road. "But they were the words I needed to say." This is the strange freedom of releasing pride. Sometimes we spend years waiting for another person to do the thing that would set us free. Then we discover that our freedom was never completely in their hands. The old man returned to the shrine the next afternoon, but he did not sit beneath the tree. He swept fallen leaves. He spoke with travelers. He carried water for an old woman. The road was no longer a place of waiting. The apology might still come. It might not. But his life had begun moving again. A few days later, the monk and traveler continued their journey. Near the edge of another village, they heard shouting from a small house. A young man stood outside. His fists were tight. His face was full of pain. The words he was angry about had been spoken many years earlier. The person who spoke them was his father. The old man had spent years waiting to hear 2 words. This young man had spent years hearing the same cruel words over and over inside his own mind. His father had stopped speaking long ago, but the voice had never left him. The old man had waited 7 years for an apology. The young man they met next had received one. It had not been enough. His name was Arun. He lived alone in a small house near the edge of the village. When the monk and traveler passed, Arun was chopping wood. He struck each piece much harder than necessary. Again, again, again. The traveler noticed his face. There was anger there, but underneath it was something older. The monk asked, "Who are you fighting?" Arun stopped. "No one." The monk looked at the broken wood. "Then someone is losing badly." Arun almost smiled. Almost. Instead, he placed the axe down. "My father." "Where is he?" "Dead." The answer came quickly, too quickly. The monk sat on a low stone wall. "And yet the fight continues." Arun looked at him. He did not like how true that sounded. His father had been a difficult man. He worked hard. He provided food. But tenderness did not come easily to him. When Arun was a child, mistakes were never small. If he spilled rice, he was careless. If he struggled at school, he was lazy. If he cried, he was weak. If he tried something and failed, his father had one sentence ready: "You will never become anything." He heard it when he was 8. He heard it at 12. He heard it at 17. Eventually, his father stopped needing to say it. Arun learned to say it to himself. This is how some wounds survive. The person who hurt us leaves, but their voice moves inside. Years later, we mistake it for our own. Arun grew older. He worked hard. He built his own home. He learned carpentry. People trusted him. He became good at what he did. Still, whenever something went wrong, the old sentence returned: "You will never become anything." His father became ill near the end of his life. One evening, he asked Arun to sit beside him. He said, "I was too hard on you." Then he whispered, "I am sorry." Arun had waited years for those words, but when they came, something inside him refused them. He said nothing. His father died 3 days later. Now Arun carried both wounds, the words his father had spoken, and the apology he had been too angry to receive. The monk asked, "Did your father know his words hurt you?" At the end, yes. Did he regret them? I think so. Then why are you still repeating them for him? Arun looked confused. I am not. The monk pointed toward the wood. What were you thinking before I arrived? Arun was silent. Finally, he said, I cut one piece badly. And then, I thought I was useless. Whose word is that? Arun's face changed. He knew his father had died, but Arun had become the keeper of his father's harshest sentence. This happens more than we realize. Someone calls us foolish, unlovable, weak, a failure, too much, not enough. Years pass. They may forget saying it. We do not. We carry the sentence into new rooms, new relationships, new attempts. Then we use it against ourselves before anyone else gets the chance. The Buddha taught that the mind becomes shaped by what it repeatedly holds. A thought repeated often begins to feel true. Not because it is true, because it is familiar. Arun said, "But he did say it." "Yes." "So how do I pretend he didn't?" "You do not." The monk picked up one piece of chopped wood. "If someone gives you poison, and you know it is poison, must you keep drinking because they truly gave it to you?" Arun shook his head. "Then why must a cruel sentence remain true simply because someone truly spoke it?" Arun sat down. No one had ever put it that way. His father's words were real, but reality and truth were not always the same thing. It was real that the words had been spoken. It was not true that Arun was worthless. The monk asked, "What kind of carpenter are you?" "People say I am good." "Do you help your neighbors?" "Yes." "Do people trust you?" "I think so." "Have you become nothing?" Arun looked at his hands. "No." The traveler said softly, "Then perhaps your life has already answered your father." Arun's eyes filled. He had spent years trying to prove his father wrong. But even that was another form of attachment. His father still stood at the center of everything. Every success was an argument. Every failure was proof. Every decision was made beneath the shadow of one dead man's opinion. The monk said, "You do not become free when you finally win the argument with the past. You become free when you no longer need the argument." That landed deeply. Arun asked, "How do I stop hearing his voice?" "You may still hear it." "Then what changes?" "You stop obeying it." This is important. Letting go does not mean every painful memory disappears. Some remain, sometimes for life. But a memory can remain without being our master. A voice can arise without becoming our command. The next morning, the monk asked Arun to write the sentence on a piece of wood. "You will never become anything." Arun stared at it. Then the monk said, "Now write what your life has shown you." Under it, Arun slowly wrote, "I became someone who stayed, someone who worked, someone who learned, someone who can choose his own words." He looked at the two sentences. One came from the past, one came from his life. The monk asked, "Which one will you continue repeating?" Arun took the wood to the fire. He did not burn it dramatically. He simply placed it among the other pieces. By evening, it became ash. His father's words had not disappeared from history, but Arun no longer needed to build his future around them. Before leaving, the traveler asked, "Do you forgive him?" Arun thought carefully. "I am beginning to stop carrying him in the worst moment of his life." That was enough. Forgiveness does not always arrive as warmth. Sometimes it begins as refusing to keep the wound alive. The monk and traveler left Arun's village the next day. They walked until they reached a house near a field of white flowers. An older woman sat outside. There were two bowls on the table. One was filled with rice. The other was empty. She placed food in both. Then she waited. No one came to the second bowl. The son had been unable to release words spoken by someone who was gone. This woman could not release a place at the table, and every evening she prepared dinner for a person who would never again sit there. Arun had learned that the dead can keep speaking when we refuse to release their words. The widow beside the field had found another way to keep the dead present. Every evening she set two bowls. Her name was Mala. She had lived with her husband for 52 years. That is a long time to share ordinary things: a bed, a table, a doorway. 1,000 small habits no one else would notice. He liked his rice softer than she did. He always coughed before speaking in the morning. He left his sandals facing the wrong direction. He sang badly while repairing things. He sat in the same chair every evening. When two people live together long enough, their lives begin to fit around each other like hands that have held each other for years. Then one person dies, and the empty spaces remain. Mala's husband died during the rainy season. He had been ill for months. She knew death was coming. Knowing did not prepare her. People often say, "At least you had time," as if time makes goodbye simple. It does not. After the funeral, relatives stayed with her. Then they returned to their own homes. The house became quiet. The first evening alone, Mala cooked rice. Without thinking, she placed 2 bowls on the table. Then she sat down. She stared at the second bowl. She cried until the food went cold. The next evening, she did it again. And again. Weeks passed, months. Every night, 2 bowls. The monk and traveler arrived just before sunset. Mala welcomed them warmly. She offered tea. When dinner came, the traveler noticed 3 bowls, one for him, one for the monk, and one beside the empty chair. The monk asked, "Who sits there?" "My husband." The traveler looked gently toward the chair. Mala corrected herself. "He used to." The monk said nothing. After dinner, Mala gathered the bowls. She washed the empty one first. The monk asked, "Why do you still set it?" Mala looked surprised. "I have always set his bowl, but he is not hungry." Her face tightened. "I know that." "Then who needs the bowl?" Mala stopped washing. That question hurt. She dried her hands. "I do." There it was. Honesty. Sometimes grief creates rituals because the heart does not know how else to continue. We keep the phone number. We listen to the same recording. We leave the room unchanged. We set the bowl. These things can comfort us for a while, but sometimes the ritual stops helping us remember. It starts helping us avoid. Mala had never eaten dinner alone. Not truly. She could not bear the idea. To set one bowl felt like admitting something final, and finality frightened her. The monk asked, "If you set one bowl tomorrow, will you love him less?" "No." "Will 52 years disappear?" "No." "Will he become more dead?" Mala's eyes filled with tears. "No." "Then what are you protecting?" She whispered, "The life we had." The monk sat beside her. "Can that life continue exactly as it was?" She shook her head. "No." "Then perhaps loving it means allowing it to become memory." Mala began crying, not loudly, slow tears, the kind that come from a truth we already knew but did not want spoken. Buddhism does not ask us to stop loving people who die. It asks us to see clearly. Love is not the same as holding a place open forever. Love can change form. A person can leave the room and remain part of our heart. But attachment says that if we change anything, we are abandoning them. So we freeze. We stop moving furniture, stop meeting people, stop laughing too loudly. Sometimes we even feel guilty when a good day appears. How can I feel joy when they are gone? But grief is not a promise to remain miserable. Love does not ask us to die while still breathing. Mala said, "When I laugh, I feel disloyal." The monk asked, "Did your husband love your laughter?" "Yes." "Then why would his death require you to destroy something he loved?" She looked at him. For months, she had treated sorrow like proof of devotion. The deeper the pain, the deeper the love. But maybe this was not true. Maybe love could also be shown by continuing. The next evening, Mala cooked rice. Her hands moved automatically toward the second bowl. Then they stopped. She stood there for a long time. The monk and traveler did not speak. Finally, she placed one bowl on the table. One. She sat down. The empty chair remained. That was the hardest part. Nothing filled it. Nothing could. Mala took one bite, then another. Halfway through the meal, she began crying. She kept eating. This is courage too. Not always climbing mountains. Sometimes courage is eating one bowl of rice in a quiet house after 52 years of sharing dinner. The next morning, Mala moved her husband's chair. Not out of the house, only from the table to the window. She placed a small plant beside it. "I am not ready to give it away," she said. The monk smiled. "You do not have to." Letting go has no deadline. It is not a competition. The important thing is movement, a little space where life can enter again. Before the monk and traveler left, Mala handed them fruit for the road. She stood at the doorway. Behind her, there was one bowl drying beside the sink. And for the first time, that did not feel like betrayal. It felt like truth. They traveled north toward a large city. Tall walls appeared in the distance. Beyond them stood a palace. Inside lived a king with servants, guards, gold, land, and everything a person might fear losing. The widow had struggled to release one empty place at her table. The king had an entire kingdom, and every night he lay awake imagining the day it would no longer be his. Mala had feared that moving one bowl would mean losing her husband again. The king inside the great city feared something different. He feared losing everything before anything had even been taken. He was powerful. People bowed when he entered a room. Servants opened doors before he reached them. Guards surrounded his palace. Gold filled locked rooms. His name was spoken across the kingdom. Still, he could not sleep. Every sound at night became a threat. Footsteps in a hallway, a whisper between guards, a horse arriving after dark. He imagined rebellion, betrayal, poison, a younger ruler, a stronger army, a son becoming impatient, a minister becoming ambitious. Nothing had happened. But fear does not always need an event. Sometimes attachment creates the danger by itself. The monk and traveler entered the city during a festival. They had no reason to visit the palace, but a strange event brought them there. One afternoon, the king saw the monk sitting beneath a tree outside the palace walls. The monk had one robe, one bowl, one walking staff, nothing else. The king watched from a balcony. The monk looked peaceful. This annoyed him. The king had everything. The monk had almost nothing, yet only one of them slept well. He sent a guard. "Bring that monk to me." The monk entered the palace with the traveler. The king looked at his worn robe. "You own nothing." "Very little. Aren't you afraid?" "Of what?" "Losing what you have." The monk looked at his bowl. "If it breaks, I will need another bowl." The king frowned. "That is all? What else should happen?" The king did not like this answer. He walked toward a window overlooking the city. "Do you know what I have to protect?" "Yes." "You do not understand." "Perhaps not. Thousands depend on me." "Yes." "Enemies would take this kingdom if I became weak." "Perhaps." "My own family may fight over the throne after me." "Perhaps." The king turned. "Then how can I not worry?" The monk answered, "You can prepare without living inside fear." The king laughed. Easy words from a man with no kingdom. The monk looked around the room. "You are right. I have no kingdom." Then he asked, "Do you?" The king's face hardened. "Of course." "For how long?" The room became quiet. The king understood the question immediately. He did not like it. A throne feels permanent only when we avoid thinking about time. Every king leaves it, some through defeat, some through old age, some through death. No ruler has ever kept a throne forever. No wealthy person has kept wealth forever. No young person has kept youth. No body has kept strength. Still, we organize our lives around pretending otherwise. The king said, "So because I will lose it one day, I should not care." "No." The monk walked toward the balcony. "Care for the kingdom, serve the people, protect what needs protection. But do not ask the throne to give you what a throne cannot give. What is that? Permanent safety. The king became quiet. That was exactly what he had been asking from it. He believed power would make him safe. Then, once he gained power, he discovered power created new fears. If you have nothing, you fear not getting. If you have much, you fear losing. Attachment can turn abundance into another form of poverty. The king had become poor in peace. Every possession needed guarding, every title needed defending, every person became a possible rival. The monk asked, "When did you last walk through your city without guards?" "Never." "When did you last speak to someone who did not want something from you?" The king could not remember. "When did you last eat without worrying about poison?" Again, no answer. The monk said, "You own the throne, but the fear of losing it owns you." The king sat down. He looked tired, not like a ruler, like a man. This is something Buddhism keeps returning to. Behind every title is a human being, king, merchant, parent, teacher, rich, poor. We build identities and then become afraid of anything that threatens them. I am respected. I am successful, I am needed, I am powerful, I am good. Then someone disagrees. Someone becomes better, someone stops needing us, and suddenly we feel as if we are disappearing. The Buddha taught that no fixed identity can be held forever. Everything we call me is changing. The body, the role, the reputation, the position. Suffering grows when we build our whole self around something that time can take. The king asked, "What should I do?" The monk looked toward the throne. "Sit somewhere else." The king almost smiled. "What?" "Tomorrow, do not sit there." The next day, the king held court from a simple wooden chair beside the throne. His ministers were confused. Nothing terrible happened. The kingdom continued. The following day, he walked through the palace gardens without carrying the royal staff. Still, the kingdom continued. A week later, he ate with his oldest friend without servants standing beside them. He laughed. He had forgotten how. Little by little, he practiced being a man who happened to be king, not a king who had forgotten he was a man. His responsibilities remained. But the throne began becoming a seat again, not his soul. Months later, the monk and traveler prepared to leave the city. The king asked one final question. "How do I know when I am no longer attached?" The monk answered, "When you can care deeply for something without believing you cannot live if it changes." The king looked toward the palace. He was not completely free. Very few people become free all at once. But now he could see the chain. And seeing the chain is the beginning of taking it off. The monk and traveler left the city gates behind them. On a narrow road outside the walls, they came across a beggar sitting beneath a tree. He had almost nothing, one torn cloth, one wooden bowl, and one gold coin hidden tightly inside his fist. The king had feared losing a kingdom. The beggar had only one coin. But attachment does not measure the size of what we hold. It only measures how tightly we refuse to open our hand. The king had feared losing a kingdom. The beggar outside the city walls had almost nothing. But attachment does not care how much we own. It only cares how tightly we hold. The beggar sat beneath an old tree beside the road. His clothes were worn. His sandals were nearly broken. Beside him was a wooden bowl with a few copper coins inside. Travelers passed. Some gave him food, some gave him money. Most did not look at him at all. The monk and traveler were about to pass when they noticed something strange. The beggar's right hand stayed closed, even when he ate, even when he reached for water, even when he slept beneath the tree. His fingers remained wrapped around something. The traveler asked, "What are you holding?" The beggar pulled his hand toward his chest. "Nothing." The monk smiled. "Then nothing has made your hand very tired." The beggar looked suspicious. Finally, he opened his fingers just enough for them to see. Inside was a gold coin. The traveler was surprised. One gold coin could have bought the beggar food for many weeks. It could have bought better sandals, a warm blanket, perhaps even a small room for a time. "Where did you get it?" the traveler asked. "A merchant dropped it." "When?" "6 months ago." The traveler stared at him. "You have had that coin for 6 months?" The beggar nodded. "Why have you not spent it?" His fingers closed again. "Because then I would not have it." There it was, the entire prison in one sentence. The beggar had spent most of his life with almost nothing. He knew hunger. He knew cold nights. He knew what it felt like to ask strangers for food. Then one morning, he saw something shining in the dust. Gold. He picked it up. At first, he felt safe. For the first time in years, he had something valuable. But by evening, a new feeling arrived. Fear. What if someone saw it? What if someone stole it? What if he spent it and became poor again? So he hid it in his fist. At night, he slept with his hand against his chest. During the day, he watched everyone who came near him. When another beggar sat too close, he moved away. When someone offered help, he wondered what they wanted. The coin had given him wealth. Then it took away trust. It gave him possibility. Then it took away peace. This is what attachment can do. We think we are holding something. Slowly, it begins holding us. The monk asked, "Has the coin fed you?" "No." "Has it kept you warm?" "No." "Has it given you a place to sleep?" "No." "Then what has it given you?" The beggar thought. "Security." The monk looked at his closed fist. "You look frightened." The beggar said nothing. Sometimes the things we call security are only fear wearing expensive clothes. We say, "I need more money so I can relax." Then we get more money and become afraid of losing it. We say, "I need this person to stay so I can feel safe." Then they stay and we spend every day worrying they might leave. We say, "I need people to respect me." Then we receive respect and become terrified of making a mistake. Attachment promises rest. Then it gives us guarding. The beggar said, "You do not understand poverty. Perhaps not the way you do. Then do not tell me to give away the only valuable thing I have." The monk shook his head. "I did not tell you to give it away." The beggar looked confused. "Then what?" "Use it." The beggar stared at the coin. Use it. Such a simple idea. Yet for 6 months he had not allowed himself to consider it. The coin had stopped being money. It had become proof that he was no longer completely powerless. Spending it felt like becoming nothing again. The monk asked, "Before you found the coin, who were you?" "A beggar." "And after?" The man looked at his torn clothes. "A beggar with a gold coin." The traveler laughed softly. Even the beggar smiled. The monk continued, "Then perhaps the coin did not change who you are as much as you hoped." The beggar looked down. Buddhist teaching speaks often about clinging because we try to build a permanent self from temporary things. I am wealthy. I am poor. I am important. I am unwanted. I am successful. I am a failure. We gather objects and labels and use them to answer the question, who am I? Then, when the object changes, we feel as if we are changing too. The beggar had turned one coin into an identity. Without it, he feared becoming less. But a human life cannot be measured by what fits inside a fist. The monk pointed toward a food stall near the city gate. "Are you hungry?" "Yes." "When did you last eat a full meal?" The beggar hesitated. 3 days ago." The traveler looked at him in disbelief. "You are hungry while holding enough money to eat." The beggar became embarrassed. Again, this is attachment. We suffer to protect the thing we believe will save us from suffering. The beggar finally stood. His legs were weak. They walked to the food stall. He opened his hand. For the first time in months, his fingers stretched fully. The skin in his palm had a deep mark from the coin. He stared at it. The object had literally left its shape on his body. He bought food, then sandals, then a blanket. He exchanged the rest of the coin for smaller money. As he counted it, fear appeared again. The monk noticed. "Your hand wants to close." The beggar nodded. "What should I do?" "Notice. And then, choose again." This is Buddhist practice, not becoming a person who never feels attachment, becoming a person who recognizes attachment before it becomes a cage. The beggar ate slowly. Halfway through, another hungry man approached. For a moment, the beggar protected his bowl. Then he stopped. He broke his bread in two. He gave half away. Something surprising happened. He felt richer, not because he had more, because for one moment he was no longer guarding. Generosity is powerful in Buddhist teaching for this reason. Giving trains the hand to open, and when the hand opens, the heart often follows. The monk and traveler left the city road the next morning. Behind them, the beggar still had some money, but he no longer slept with his fist closed. Ahead stood a quiet monastery in the hills. There, a young monk was working harder than anyone else. He cleaned first. He meditated longest. He spoke carefully. He followed every rule. Yet none of it brought him peace. The beggar had wanted to keep one coin. The young monk wanted something even harder to hold. He wanted everyone to approve of him. The beggar had spent 6 months protecting a gold coin. The young monk in the hill monastery protected something no one could see: his reputation. His name was Sona. He was young, serious, hard-working. Whenever there was work to be done, Sona arrived first. He swept the courtyard before sunrise. He cleaned the meditation hall. He carried water for older monks. He memorized teachings quickly. During meditation, he sat perfectly still. From the outside, he looked like an ideal student. Inside, he was exhausted. Sona did not simply want to practice well. He wanted everyone to notice that he practiced well. If the teacher praised another monk, Sona felt pain. If someone corrected him, he thought about it all night. If a visitor thanked him, he felt happy. If they forgot, his mood dropped. His peace rose and fell inside other people's mouths. The monk and traveler stayed at the monastery for several days. On the second morning, they saw Sona sweeping the courtyard. An older monk walked past. "You missed some leaves near the gate," he said. That was all. A simple observation. But Sona's face changed. He immediately ran toward the gate. He swept the leaves. Then he swept the entire courtyard again. The traveler asked, "Why are you starting over?" "I did it badly. There were 3 leaves. That means I was careless." "Did he say you were careless?" "No." "Then who said it?" Sona did not answer. The voice came from inside. That is where approval-seeking eventually moves. At first, we need other people to judge us. Later, we learn to judge ourselves for them. Sona had grown up in a family where praise was rare. His older brother was stronger. His sister was quicker at learning. Whenever Sona did something well, he looked toward his father. Usually his father only said, "You can do better." So Sona tried harder. When he joined the monastery, the people changed. The hunger did not. He wanted the teacher to call him wise. He wanted the older monks to call him disciplined. He wanted visitors to see him as peaceful. There was only one problem. He was becoming less peaceful every day. One evening, the monk found Sona sitting outside the meditation hall. "You look tired." "I am fine." "Are you?" Sona lowered his eyes. The monk asked, "How many people must approve of you before you can rest?" Sona looked up. "I do not care what people think." The monk smiled. This is one of the sentences people often say when they care very deeply. The monk asked, "If your teacher told you tomorrow that you were a poor student, what would happen?" "I would work harder." "And if he still did not praise you?" "I would improve." "And if people still misunderstood you?" Sona became irritated. What is wrong with wanting to be good? Nothing. What is wrong with wanting to improve? Nothing. Then what are you saying? The monk answered, you are not only trying to become good, you are trying to control what every mind thinks of you. Sona became silent. That was true and impossible. This is another kind of attachment. We cling to an image of ourselves inside other people. We want to be seen as kind, wise, successful, attractive, strong, generous, important. Then someone sees us differently, and we suffer. The strange part is that we cannot enter another person's mind and arrange their opinion. We can spend years trying. Still, people will misunderstand us. Some will like us for reasons that are not true. Others will dislike us for reasons that are not true. Some will praise us today and criticize us tomorrow. The Buddha spoke about worldly conditions that constantly change, praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. They come, they go. If our peace rises with one and collapses with the other, we become like a leaf in strong wind. Sona said, but criticism hurts. Yes. How do I stop caring? You do not need to become cold. The monk sat beside him. Listen to criticism. Learn if there is truth in it. Then release what is not useful. Sona looked toward the meditation hall. What about praise? Do the same. This surprised him. Praise can also become attachment. We remember a compliment. Then we begin performing to hear it again. What once felt pleasant becomes something we need. The monk asked Sona to do something difficult the next day. Clean the kitchen after everyone sleeps. Sona agreed. And tell no one. That part bothered him. He cleaned it anyway. The next morning, everyone entered the kitchen. No one knew who had done it. One monk said, "It looks clean." Another said nothing. Sona waited. No praise came. He felt disappointment rise. He watched it. He did not run after anyone to explain. That evening, the monk asked, "Was the kitchen less clean because no one thanked you?" No. Was the work less useful? No. Then what was missing? Sona smiled weakly. My reward. The monk shook his head. The reward you were attached to. Over the next week, Sona practiced invisible goodness. He carried water and did not say who had done it. He repaired a torn mat without telling anyone. He cleaned the walkway after dark. Something inside him began to settle. His actions became simpler. Goodness did not need an audience. Practice did not need applause. One afternoon, the old teacher corrected Sona during chanting. For a moment, heat rose into Sona's face. The familiar thought appeared. He thinks I am foolish. Then Sona stopped. He asked himself a different question. Was the correction useful? Yes. He corrected the mistake. Then he continued chanting. The moment passed. That was freedom. Not never feeling embarrassed, not needing embarrassment to control the next hour. Before leaving the monastery, the traveler asked Sona, "Do you no longer care what people think?" Sona smiled. "I care." Then he added, "I just do not want to live there anymore." That was enough. The monk and traveler continued into the hills. Several days later, they reached a village known for a respected spiritual teacher. People came from far away to ask him questions. He listened to everyone. He solved arguments. He gave food. He offered advice. He rarely slept. Everyone called him compassionate. But when the monk looked into his tired eyes, he saw another kind of attachment. The young monk had needed everyone's approval. The teacher needed everyone to be okay. And because suffering never stops arriving in this world, he had forgotten how to stop carrying it. Sona had been trying to control what everyone thought of him. The teacher in the next village was trying to control something even larger, everyone's suffering. His name was Ananda, not the famous disciple of the Buddha, just a village teacher with a gentle voice and a heart that had forgotten its limits. People loved him. When a marriage was failing, they went to Ananda. When someone was grieving, they went to Ananda. When a family had no food, they went to Ananda. When two brothers were fighting, they asked Ananda to settle it. When someone was sick, he visited. When someone was afraid, he stayed. At first, this came from compassion. Then compassion became responsibility for everything. Ananda began believing that if someone around him suffered, he had failed. So he said yes to everyone. Yes, I will come. Yes, I will help. Yes, I will speak to him. Yes, I will give you money. Yes, I will stay another hour. Yes, come tomorrow. Eventually, his body began saying what his mouth would not. Enough. He stopped sleeping well. His back hurt. He forgot meals. During meditation, instead of watching his breath, he thought about 10 people waiting for him. Still, whenever someone knocked, he opened the door. The monk and traveler arrived at his house one evening. Ananda was speaking with a farmer about his marriage. Outside, 3 more people waited. A mother with a sick child, a young man in debt, an old woman angry with her sister. The traveler whispered, "Does he ever rest?" A villager answered, "Everyone needs him." That sentence sounded like praise. To the monk, it sounded dangerous. Late that night, after everyone left, Ananda sat on the floor. He looked completely empty. The monk asked, "When did you last eat?" Ananda thought, "I do not remember." "Sleep?" "A few hours." "Sit quietly?" Ananda laughed. "People need help." "Do you?" Ananda looked at him. "What do you mean? Do you need help?" "I am the teacher." That was not my question. Something in Ananda's face softened, then broke. He put his hands over his eyes. "I am tired." The monk said nothing. "I am so tired." There are people who spend years waiting for permission to admit this. Parents, teachers, caregivers, friends. The person everyone calls strong. They become the place where everyone else places their pain. And because they are kind, they keep receiving it. Eventually, kindness without wisdom becomes self-destruction. Buddhism teaches compassion, but compassion is not the same as carrying every person to the other side of the river. Sometimes we can only show them the bridge. Ananda said, "If I stop helping, what happens to them?" The monk asked, "Have you stopped all suffering so far?" "No." "Have you solved every life you touched?" "No." "Then perhaps that was never your task." Ananda looked uncomfortable. "But if I can help, shouldn't I?" "Sometimes." "Only sometimes?" "Sometimes helping means stepping forward." The monk continued, "Sometimes helping means stepping back so another person learns to stand." That was harder for Ananda. He had not noticed that some people had become dependent on him. One young man came every week asking what decision he should make. Which work should he choose? Who should he marry? Should he travel? Should he stay? Ananda always answered. The young man never learned to trust his own judgment. Another family borrowed food every month. Ananda kept giving. He never asked why they spent money carelessly. His generosity was easing the result, but protecting the cause. This is why Buddhist compassion is joined with wisdom. Compassion without wisdom can become attachment to being needed. The monk asked, "How do you feel when someone ignores your advice?" Ananda hesitated, frustrated. "Why?" "Because I know what would help." "Then perhaps part of you is not only helping." The monk looked at him gently. "Part of you is trying to control the outcome." Ananda felt the truth immediately. He cared deeply, but hidden inside that care was attachment. "I need them to get better. I need them to choose correctly. I need my help to work. I need to save them." This creates terrible suffering because no human being can control another person's path. We can offer wisdom, we can offer food, we can offer kindness, but people still choose. They still make mistakes, they still suffer, they still lose things, they still die. The Buddha himself taught the path. He did not walk it for anyone else. The next morning, someone knocked before sunrise. Ananda immediately stood. The monk said, "Wait. What if it is urgent? Find out." At the door stood the young man who always wanted decisions made for him. "I have been offered work in another village," he said. "Should I go?" Ananda opened his mouth, then stopped. Normally, he would give an answer. Instead, he asked, "What do you think?" The young man looked surprised. "I came to ask you?" "I know. But what should I do?" Ananda smiled. "Sit with it. Look at what you fear. Look at what matters. Then choose." The young man was disappointed, but something had changed. For the first time, the responsibility remained in his own hands. Later, Ananda told the family, asking for food, that he would help them once more. Then he would also help them make a better plan for what they had. He told villagers there would be certain hours when he received visitors. At first, some people complained. This was difficult. A person who is used to being needed often feels guilty when others dislike a boundary. But boundaries are not always rejection. Sometimes they protect the compassion that would otherwise burn itself out. Ananda began eating on time. He returned to meditation. When someone came with pain, he listened without believing he had to remove all of it. That changed everything. He became more present because he was no longer secretly fighting reality. One evening, he told the monk, "I thought compassion meant never turning away." The monk replied, "True compassion also knows when holding on is creating more suffering." Ananda looked toward the village. "So I cannot save everyone?" "No." "Then what can I do?" "Meet the person in front of you with a clear heart. Do what is wise, then release the result." Ananda breathed deeply. It felt strange and peaceful. When the monk and traveler left, Ananda walked with them to the edge of the village. There they passed a mother arguing with her grown son. The son wanted to leave home and become a craftsman in another town. His mother stood in the doorway, refusing to let him go. Ananda watched them. Then he smiled sadly. He knew that look, the need to protect, the fear of what might happen, the belief that love meant controlling the outcome. The teacher had tried to save everyone. The mother was trying to save one person, her child. And because she loved him more than anything, she had begun squeezing his life so tightly that there was almost no room left for him to live it. Ananda had learned that caring for someone does not mean controlling what happens to them. The mother outside the village had not learned this yet. Her name was Lila. Her son, Dev, was 23 years old. To Lila, that number meant very little. She still remembered the baby who slept against her chest, the child who became sick one winter and nearly died, the boy who scraped his knee running beside the river, the teenager who came home late and made her sit awake beside the window. Mothers remember these versions, sometimes long after the child has become someone else. Dev wanted to leave the village. He had been offered a place with a respected woodworker in a town 3 days away. He loved carving. He had spent years learning whenever he could. This was the opportunity he had wanted. Lila hated it. "The town is dangerous." "I will be careful." "You do not know anyone there." "My teacher knows the craftsman." "You can work here." "There is no one here who can teach me what I need." "Then learn something else." Dev stared at her. That sentence hurt. The monk and traveler had stopped nearby. They did not speak at first. The argument continued. Finally, Dev said, "Mother, this is my life." Lila's face changed. "After everything I have done for you?" There it was. A sentence spoken by loving parents everywhere when love becomes tangled with fear. "I sacrificed for you. Therefore, choose the life that makes me feel safe." Dev walked away. Lila stood in the doorway, crying. The monk approached slowly. "You love him very much. More than my own life." That is why this hurts. She nodded. He does not understand. What does he not understand? What can happen? Lila listed everything. He might become sick. He might be cheated. He might fail. He might not have enough food. The people there might be cruel. He might get hurt on the road. He might forget his family. He might never return. Fear is creative. Give it one unknown future, and it can build 100 disasters. The monk asked, "Which of these things has happened?" "None yet." "And yet you have suffered each one already." Lila became quiet. This is one of the hidden costs of attachment. We believe worry protects the people we love, but often worry only makes us experience pain before pain has even arrived. Sometimes it arrives, often it does not. Either way, worry has already taken today. Lila said, "A mother is supposed to protect her child." "Yes." "Then why should I let him go toward danger?" The monk pointed toward a tree nearby. A bird was feeding 2 young birds in a nest. "Do you think that bird protects them?" "Of course." "What happens when they learn to fly?" Lila watched. "They leave." Would keeping them in the nest forever be protection? She knew the answer. No. The monk said, "Protection has to change as the child changes." When Dev was small, love meant holding his hand near the river. Now love might mean releasing it. This is difficult because parents often grow around the role of being needed. For years, the child depends on them for food, safety, answers, comfort. Then slowly, if life goes well, the child begins needing less. What should feel like success can feel like loss. The parent asks, "Who am I if they no longer need me in the same way?" Attachment can hide inside devotion. We say, "I only want what is best." But sometimes what we really mean is, "I want the choice that makes me less afraid." The monk asked Lila, "Do you trust your son?" "Yes." "Do you believe he is foolish?" "No." "Has he worked for this opportunity?" "For years." "Then what are you holding?" Lila began crying again. "Him." The monk shook his head gently. "No. You are holding the child he used to be." That reached her. She looked toward the road where Dev had disappeared. In her mind, he was still 10, still 12, still the boy running home when frightened. But that boy had changed. Impermanence does not only take people from us through death. Sometimes it takes one version of them and gives us another. The baby becomes a child, the child becomes an adult, the student becomes independent, the person we knew changes. If we refuse to release the old version, we cannot truly meet the person standing in front of us now. Lila asked, "What if he fails?" "He may." "What if he suffers?" "He will." That answer frightened her. The monk continued, "Every human life contains suffering. You cannot love him enough to remove that truth." Lila looked down. "But you can give him something better." "What?" "The knowledge that when suffering comes, he can meet it." This is a different kind of protection, not removing every stone from the road, teaching someone how to walk, not making every decision for them, helping them learn from decisions, not preventing every fall, giving them a place where they can return without shame. That evening, Dev came home. His travel bag was packed. He looked nervous. "Mother, I leave tomorrow." Lila wanted to say no. The word rose immediately. She felt fear tighten her chest. She noticed it. Fear is a wave. Attachment is a hand closing. For once, she did not obey either one. She asked, "Do you have enough food for the road?" Dev looked surprised. "Yes." "Money?" "Yes." "Do you know where you will sleep?" "Yes." She nodded. Then she went inside. She returned with a small cloth bundle. Inside was food she had prepared. Dev took it. Neither spoke for a moment. Finally, Lila said, "I am afraid." Dev's face softened. "I know. I may always be afraid." "I know." She touched his face. "But I do not want my fear to become your cage." Dev began to cry. So did she. The next morning, Lila walked with him to the edge of the village. The monk and traveler were preparing to leave in the same direction. When they reached the old tree, Dev hugged his mother. She held him tightly. Then she released him. That second part mattered. Love held. Wisdom opened the arms. Dev walked away. Lila remained beneath the tree, watching until he disappeared. Her heart hurt. Letting go does not mean the heart becomes empty. Sometimes it hurts precisely because love remains. But pain and peace can exist together. She could miss him without stopping him. She could fear for him without controlling him. She could love him without owning his future. The monk and traveler walked beside Dev for several miles before their paths separated. Near sunset, they reached another village. Outside a small workshop stood a potter staring at a beautiful vase. A thin crack ran down one side. He had spent days trying to hide it. He had remade the same vase again and again because nothing imperfect felt acceptable. The mother had been holding on to the life she wanted for her son. The potter was holding on to another impossible demand. He wanted something made by human hands to be perfect. And because he could not accept one crack, he was about to destroy something beautiful. The mother had been holding on to the life she wanted for her son. The potter in the next village was holding on to something just as impossible. Perfection. His name was Ravi. He was known throughout the area for making beautiful pottery. People traveled from other villages to buy his bowls, lamps, and water jars. His hands were steady. His eyes noticed small details. He could look at a piece of clay and already see what it might become. But Ravi had one problem. He could not accept anything that was not perfect. If a bowl leaned slightly to one side, he destroyed it. If the color came out different from what he expected, he threw it away. If a small mark appeared during firing, he began again. People called this discipline. Ravi called it excellence. But inside him, it was fear. He was afraid of making something imperfect, because somewhere along the way, the things he created had become proof of who he was. A beautiful vase meant he was talented. A flawed vase meant something was wrong with him. The monk and traveler arrived at his workshop near sunset. Clay covered the floor. Finished pots stood on wooden shelves. But in the corner was a large pile of broken pieces. The traveler looked at them. What happened? Ravi barely looked up. Mistakes. The monk walked closer. He picked up one piece. It was part of a beautiful blue bowl. There was one small mark near the edge. You broke this? Yes. Why? It was not right. The monk looked at the pile. All of these were not right. No. The monk placed the piece down. The next morning, Ravi showed them the vase he had been working on for days. It was tall, smooth, beautifully shaped, but a thin crack ran down one side. Ravi stared at it with anger. This is the fourth one. The fourth what? The traveler asked. The fourth failure. The monk looked at the vase. What is it supposed to be? A vase. Can it hold flowers? Yes. Can it hold dry grain? Yes. Is it beautiful? Ravi became irritated. That is not the point. What is the point? The crack. There it was. One crack had become larger than the whole vase. We do this with ourselves. One mistake, one weakness, one bad decision, one part of our body we do not like, one failure in a life containing thousands of other moments. Then the mind points at the crack and says, "This is all you are." Ravi lifted the vase. "I will break it." The monk placed a hand gently on his arm. "Wait. For what? To see what you are destroying. I already see it." "No. You see the crack." Ravi stopped. The monk continued. "You have forgotten to see the vase. This is one of the quiet dangers of perfection. It narrows the world. A person can receive 99 good things and suffer over the one thing that went wrong. A meal can be beautiful, but we remember the one dish that failed. A day can contain kindness, laughter, food, sunlight, and one painful conversation. We go to bed thinking only about the conversation. The crack becomes the vase. Ravi said, "If I accept bad work, I will become careless." The monk shook his head. Acceptance is not carelessness. Then what is it? Seeing what is true without adding hatred. Ravi looked at the crack. The monk said, "You can learn from a mistake without hating what contains it." That sentence reached somewhere deep in Ravi, because the truth was that he did not only treat pottery this way, he treated himself this way too. When he was young, his father had also been a potter, a respected one. His father had praised good work, but had little patience for mistakes. "Again," he would say, whenever Ravi failed. Sometimes he smashed Ravi's imperfect pots himself. Again, again, again. Ravi learned to believe that worth came from getting things right. Years later, his father was gone, but the rule remained. If it is imperfect, destroy it. The Buddha taught that all. Conditioned things are imperfect in the deepest sense. They arise, they change, they break. Nothing we make can escape this. No body remains without marks. No face remains young. No relationship remains exactly as it began. No plan survives every surprise. No human life moves through the world without error. To demand perfection from changing things is to demand that life stop being life. Ravi asked, "Then should I stop trying to improve?" "No," the monk smiled. "Improve because you care, not because you hate what is unfinished. There is a great difference. One kind of effort comes from wisdom. This can be better. The other comes from rejection. This is worthless unless it is perfect. The first allows growth. The second makes every mistake feel like shame." The monk asked Ravi to place the cracked vase in the center of the workshop. Ravi resisted. "What if customers see it? Then they will see a cracked vase. They will think I made a mistake." "You did." Ravi almost laughed. The monk continued, "Are you trying to become someone who never makes mistakes, or someone who is no longer destroyed by making them?" Ravi did not answer. The next day, a woman entered the workshop looking for a vase. She saw the cracked one. "How much?" Ravi looked embarrassed. "That one is damaged." She turned it slowly. "It is beautiful. It has a crack. I can see." She smiled. "I want it for dried flowers." Ravi stared at her. For him, the crack had erased the value of the vase. For her, the crack was simply one part of it. She bought it. After she left, Ravi stood quietly. The world had not rejected the imperfect thing. He had. That afternoon, he went to the pile of broken pottery. For the first time, he looked carefully. Some pieces could still be used. Some could hold candles. Some could become small planters. Some truly needed to be discarded. But now he could decide without anger. That was the change. Buddhist wisdom does not ask us to love every flaw. It asks us not to build suffering around the fact that flaws exist. Ravi began keeping one imperfect piece from every firing, not to celebrate poor work, to remember humility, to remember change, to remember that useful and imperfect can exist together. Months later, people still came for his pottery. His work remained beautiful, maybe even more beautiful, because his hands were less afraid. Fear makes the hand tight. Acceptance allows it to move. Before leaving, the traveler asked Ravi, "Does the crack still bother you?" Ravi smiled. "Sometimes." And then, "I look at the whole vase." That is a practice worth carrying. When the mind finds one crack, look at the whole life. The monk and traveler continued down the road. Several days later, they heard metal striking metal beyond a grove of trees. A warrior was training alone. His movements were fast, hard, angry. Each strike looked as if he were fighting someone who was not there. The potter had wanted to destroy every imperfect thing. The warrior wanted to destroy one memory, but anger had kept that memory alive, and every time he lifted his sword, the person he hated returned. The potter had almost destroyed a vase because of one crack. The warrior they met next had allowed one wound to cover his whole life. His name was Kiran. Once he had served a local ruler. He had been respected, disciplined, loyal. He had trained for years. Then one day, another soldier betrayed him. The man lied to their commander. He accused Kiran of taking money from merchants passing through the region. The accusation was false, but the commander believed it. Kiran lost his position. He lost his pay. Some friends stopped speaking to him. His name became something people whispered about. Months later, the truth came out. The soldier who had lied was exposed. Kiran's name was cleared. His commander even asked him to return, but something had changed. Kiran refused. He went home, and he began training every day, not for battle, for revenge. He imagined finding the man who had betrayed him. He imagined the conversation. He imagined the fear on the man's face. He imagined making him feel the pain he had caused. Years passed. The betrayer moved far away. Kiran stayed, still angry. The monk and traveler found him striking a wooden post with his sword. Again, again, again. The wood was deeply marked. His hands were bleeding. The monk asked, "How long has that post been your enemy?" Kiran stopped. He looked at them without humor. "You should continue walking." The traveler noticed the blood. "You are hurt." "I have been hurt before." His answer had nothing to do with his hand. The monk sat beneath a nearby tree. Kiran continued training. After some time, perhaps because the monk had not left, Kiran finally asked, "What do you want?" "Nothing." "Then why? Are you still here?" "I am watching a man punish himself for something another man did." Kiran turned sharply. "You know nothing about it." "Then tell me." Maybe Kiran had been waiting years for someone to ask. He told them everything: the lie, the humiliation, the lost position, the people who stopped trusting him, the nights he could not sleep. When he finished, his breathing was heavy. The traveler said, "That was cruel." Kiran nodded. "Yes." The monk asked, "When did it happen?" 8 years ago." "And where is the man now?" "Another province." "Does he know you train every day thinking of him?" "No." "Does he lose sleep because you are angry?" Kiran's face tightened. "No." "Does your anger punish him?" Silence. The monk pointed toward Kiran's bleeding hand. "It seems to be punishing someone. Anger often feels like strength. That is why we hold it. When someone hurts us, anger rises and says, 'I will protect you.' Sometimes it does. Anger can tell us a boundary was crossed. It can move us away from danger. It can help us say no. But anger was never meant to become a home. Kiran had built one. The man who betrayed him had hurt him once. Kiran had been repeating the injury for 8 years. Every morning he remembered. Every afternoon he trained. Every night he imagined revenge. His enemy had moved away, but Kiran carried him everywhere. This is why the Buddhist teachings compare hatred to a fire. We think we are keeping it burning for someone else, but we are the ones sitting closest to the flame. Kiran said, "If I let go of my anger, he wins." The monk asked, "What does winning look like?" "He gets away with what he did." Did letting anger control 8 years of your life stop him from getting away? Kiran did not answer. The monk continued, "What if letting go is not something you do for him?" Kiran looked at him. "Then who?" "You." This is difficult for people who have been deeply hurt. Forgiveness can sound like saying the harm was acceptable. It is not. Letting go can sound like allowing someone to escape responsibility. It is not. You can remember what happened. You can protect yourself. You can refuse contact. You can seek justice and still decide that the person will no longer live inside your mind every day. Kiran sat down. His sword rested across his knees. I want him to suffer. The monk nodded. That is honest. I want him to understand what he did to me. Yes. I want him to regret it. Yes. And you are telling me not to? No. The monk looked at him. I am asking what happens to your peace while you wait. Kiran looked toward the wooden post. There were hundreds of cuts in it. Years of anger, years of repeating the same injury. The monk picked up a hot coal from the edge of Kiran's cooking fire using metal tongs. He held it up. If you wanted to throw this at your enemy, what would happen if you held it in your bare hand first? I would burn. Hatred is like that. Kiran looked away. The lesson was simple. That did not make it easy. The next morning, Kiran trained again, but the monk asked him to change one thing. Do not imagine your enemy. Then what do I imagine? Nothing. Why train? Because your body values the practice. Kiran tried. At first, every movement called up the old face. He noticed. He breathed. He returned to the movement. Again, again, not the angry again of the potter's father. A different kind. The repetition of release. The memory comes. Release it. The argument begins. Release it. The imagined revenge returns. Release it. This is how anger is sometimes loosened. Not by winning one great inner battle, by refusing to feed it every time it asks for food. Days later, Kiran visited the local market. He heard someone mention the man who had betrayed him. His body tightened. Heat rose in his chest. The old story opened, but this time he saw what was happening. The anger was a feeling, not a command. He did not have to follow it. He stood. He breathed. The feeling rose, then changed, then passed, like fear, like grief, like everything else. When he returned, he told the monk, I still hate what he did. The monk nodded. You do not need to love what happened. I am still angry. Yes, but it did not own the whole day. The monk smiled. That is the beginning. Months would be needed, maybe years, but now Kiran had a path. He began repairing things around his home. He visited old friends. He accepted small work training younger men. The life that had been frozen around betrayal began moving. One evening, he placed his sword against the wall, not because he would never use it again, because he no longer needed it beside him while he slept. The monk and traveler continued on. Soon they entered a wealthy village known for large homes and beautiful gardens. There they met an old rich man surrounded by physicians, herbs, mirrors, oils, and servants. The warrior had tried to keep anger alive because it made him feel strong. This man was fighting something no sword could defeat: time. His hair was white. His hands had begun to shake. Yet every morning he looked into the mirror and treated each new line on his face like an enemy. He had spent his whole life gaining things. Now he was discovering that no amount of wealth could purchase one more day of youth. Kiran had spent years fighting a man who was no longer near him. The rich man in the next village was fighting something much closer: his own body. His name was Devendra. He had spent most of his life building wealth. He owned land, warehouses, houses. He had servants, good food, fine clothes. When he was young, people admired his energy. He could travel for days, work long hours, eat late, wake early. He believed strength would always feel like this. Then his body began changing, slowly at first. His knees hurt after long walks. His hair became grey. He needed more rest. He forgot small things. Lines appeared around his eyes. At first, Devendra laughed. Then he saw more. And fear entered. He hired physicians. One gave him herbs. Another recommended special foods. Another told him to rest. Devendra did not want rest. He wanted youth. He bought expensive oils for his skin. He dyed his hair. He wore clothes made for younger men. He avoided old friends because seeing their aging faces reminded him of his own. He ordered servants to remove mirrors with poor lighting. His house became a place built around pretending. The monk and traveler were invited there because Devendra had heard that monks knew secrets about long life. He received them in a large room. "Tell me," he said immediately, "what practice keeps the body young?" The monk smiled. "None." Devendra frowned. "You meditate." "Yes, you control the breath. We observe it. There must be something. There are practices that help us care for the body." The monk paused. "But there is no practice that makes it permanent." Devendra disliked this answer. He had spent his whole life solving problems with effort and money. If a roof leaked, he paid someone to fix it. If a business failed, he started another. If he wanted land, he bought it. Now he had met a problem that would not negotiate: age. "I am not old," he said. The traveler looked at him. No one had said that he was. Devendra continued, "I am still strong." The monk nodded. "Then enjoy the strength that remains." Devendra became irritated. "You speak as if it is leaving." "It is." The room became quiet. Some truths feel rude only because we have avoided them. The Buddha spoke openly about aging, not to frighten people, to wake them. Anything born will age if it lives long enough. This is not failure. It is not something the body is doing wrong. It is the body keeping its agreement with nature. Devendra walked toward a window. "When I was 30, I never thought about this. Most people do not. I thought I had time." "You did." "I still have time." "Yes." The monk looked at him, but not the same kind. Devendra understood. Youth thinks time is a road with no visible end. Age begins to see the horizon. That can create fear, but it can also create clarity. When we understand that time is limited, unnecessary things begin losing power. Arguments that once seemed important become smaller. Possessions we guarded begin looking temporary. Words we were afraid to say become urgent. Love becomes easier to recognize. But Devendra had not allowed aging to teach him. He was too busy fighting it. The monk asked, "How much of your day is spent trying not to be old?" Devendra laughed nervously. "I do not know." "Your physicians." "Every morning." "The oils?" "Twice a day." "The hair dye?" "Every few weeks." "Mirrors?" Devendra looked away. "Too often." "And how much time do you spend enjoying the life you are trying so hard to keep?" That question hurt. Devendra could not remember the last time he sat in his own garden without thinking about his body. He had grandchildren. He rarely played with them because bending hurt his knees and he hated looking weak. He had old friends. He avoided them. He had beautiful evenings. He spent them researching cures for age. He was sacrificing old age because he was afraid of old age. This is what clinging does. We hold so tightly to what is leaving that we cannot receive what has arrived. Devendra said, "But I do not want to become weak." No one does. "I do not want to need help." Many people do not. "I do not want to die." The monk nodded. There is the deepest fear. Everything else had been standing in front of that sentence. Devendra sat down. His voice changed. "I am afraid." The monk sat across from him. "Yes. What do I do with that?" "Do not hide it beneath youth." The monk continued. "Look at it." Devendra did. For years, every grey hair had whispered the same message. You are moving toward death. He had tried to silence the message, Buddhist practice does something different. It remembers death. Not because life is meaningless, because life is precious. A flower is beautiful partly because it does not bloom forever. A sunset matters because it passes. A conversation becomes important when we understand that there are only so many conversations left. Impermanence does not remove meaning. It creates urgency to be awake. The monk asked Devendra to walk with him through the garden. They moved slowly. Devendra's knees hurt. He normally hated this. That day he noticed the pain without turning it into an insult. They passed a tree he had planted when his first child was born. It was enormous now. "I was stronger when I planted that," he said. "Yes." "But the tree was smaller." "Yes," Devendra smiled. "So change did not only take." The monk looked at him. "No. This is important. We speak about aging as loss, and much is lost. Speed, strength, sometimes memory, independence, people we love. But age can also bring things youth did not have: perspective, patience, humility, the ability to see which battles were never worth fighting, a softer understanding of other people, the courage to stop pretending." Devendra began changing small things. He stopped dyeing his hair, not because dye was wrong, because he no longer needed it to argue with reality. He invited old friends to dinner. They laughed about their weak knees. For the first time, aging did not feel like a private shame. He played with his grandchildren sitting on the ground. When he needed help standing, he accepted a hand. That was harder than it sounds. Receiving help can feel like losing identity when we have spent a lifetime being strong. But strength changes too. Sometimes strength is lifting something alone. Sometimes strength is allowing another person to help you carry it. Devendra continued caring for his body. He ate well, he walked, he followed useful advice. Acceptance did not make him careless. It made care gentler. He was no longer caring for the body because he believed he could defeat time. He cared because the body was still here. One evening he looked into a mirror. He saw white hair, lines, tired eyes. He also saw a man who had lived. He did not turn away. The monk and traveler left the next morning. Devendra stood at the gate and waved. He looked older than when they arrived. Nothing had changed in 3 days. But perhaps he looked older because he had stopped hiding. Far beyond the village, deep in the hills, lived a hermit. People said he had left the world to find peace. For 20 years he had lived alone. No family, no business, no wealth, no reputation to protect. It sounded like complete letting go. But when the monk met him, he discovered something surprising. The hermit had released almost everything outside himself. There was only one thing he had never released: his past. And even in the silence of the mountains, it had followed him. Devendra had tried to escape old age with money, medicine, and denial. The hermit in the mountains had tried to escape his past with distance. He had walked very far. The past had walked with him. His name was Jaya. For 20 years he had lived in a small hut above a forest valley. Villagers brought him rice. He grew vegetables. He meditated. He spoke very little. People below believed he was holy. Some climbed the mountain just to ask for blessings. Jaya rarely corrected them. The truth was more complicated. He had not come to the mountain because he was free. He had come because he wanted to disappear. Before becoming a hermit, Jaya had been a merchant. He had a wife, a daughter, a business partner named Suren. For years they worked together. Then Jaya made a terrible decision. He borrowed money secretly to expand the business. The plan failed. The debt became impossible to hide. When Suren discovered what had happened, they argued. The business collapsed. Jaya's family lost their home. His wife returned to her relatives with their daughter. Suren publicly blamed him. People in the village called him dishonest. Some were right. Jaya had not intended to hurt anyone, But intention did not erase the damage. Shame became unbearable, so one morning he left. He told himself he was renouncing worldly life, but deep inside he knew he was running. The monk and traveler reached his hut late one afternoon. Jaya welcomed them. He offered rice and boiled vegetables. After dinner, the monk noticed something beside Jaya's sleeping mat, a small wooden box. Jaya touched it several times, just as the widow had once touched her cup, just as the beggar had closed his fist around the coin. The monk asked, "What is inside?" Jaya hesitated, then opened it. Inside was an old letter. The paper was nearly falling apart. From whom? My daughter. When did she write it? 18 years ago. The letter had been sent 2 years after Jaya disappeared. His daughter had been young. She wrote that she missed him. She wrote that her mother was angry. She wrote that she did not understand why he had left. At the end were 4 words, "Please come home, father." Jaya never answered. The traveler looked at him. Why? Jaya closed the box. Because I had already ruined everything. The monk asked, and staying away repaired it? Jaya's face tightened. No. Then why did you stay? Because I was ashamed. There it was. Shame can look like humility, but sometimes shame is another form of attachment to self. I did something bad becomes I am permanently bad. I failed becomes I am a failure. I hurt someone becomes I deserve no return. Then we make suffering our identity. Jaya believed punishing himself was responsibility. For 20 years, he lived with almost nothing. He slept on a hard mat. He ate simple food. He denied himself comfort. People praised his discipline. But inside, he was still standing in the village he had left. The monk asked, "Why do you meditate?" "To become free." "Free from what?" Jaya answered immediately, "My past." The monk looked at him. "That may be why it remains." Jaya frowned. "What do you mean?" "You sit down each day trying to make it disappear." "Yes." "And each day you check if it is gone." "Yes." "Then each day you call it back." Jaya became silent. This is something we often do. We try so hard not to think about something that our whole life becomes organized around not thinking about it. Do not remember. Do not feel. Do not look. Do not return. The past remains at the center because everything we do is built around escaping it. Buddhist practice is not escape. It is seeing clearly. The monk said, "Your past happened." Jaya lowered his eyes. "Yes." "You made harmful choices." "Yes." "People suffered." Jaya's voice broke. "Yes." "And none of this changes because you hate yourself." Jaya began to cry. He had heard teachings about compassion for years. He had offered compassionate words to villagers. He had never believed they applied to him. This happens. We can forgive weakness in everyone except ourselves. We understand that others were confused, afraid, young, desperate, human. Then we look at our own past and demand that we should have known everything. The monk asked, "Did you understand then what you understand now?" "No." "Would you make the same choice now?" "No." "What changed?" "I did." The monk nodded. "Then the man you punish every day no longer exists exactly as he was. This is impermanence too. We change. The person who made the mistake and the person remembering it are connected, but they are not identical. The past deserves responsibility. It does not require eternal self-hatred." Jaya said, "What about the people I hurt? Have you asked them?" "No." "Have you apologized?" "No." "Have you tried to repair anything?" "No." "Then you have mistaken hiding for repentance." That was the hardest sentence. Jaya stood and walked outside. He looked over the valley. 20 years of silence. 20 years of believing he was paying for what he had done. But maybe he had only avoided the people who deserved his honesty. The traveler asked, "Is your wife alive?" "I do not know." "Your daughter?" "I heard years ago that she married." "Do you know where?" "Yes." the monk said. "Then your past is not asking you to disappear." Jaya looked at him. "It may be asking you to respond." This is the difference between guilt and wise responsibility. Guilt can keep us staring backward forever. Responsibility asks, what can be done now? Maybe we can apologize, maybe we can repay something, maybe we can change our behavior, maybe there is no repair possible. Even then, we can live differently. The lesson should move through us, not trap us. That night, Jaya did not meditate. He read his daughter's letter, slowly. He allowed every feeling to come: shame, love, regret, fear. He did not push them away. He watched them rise, stay, change. By morning, he had made a decision. He would leave the mountain. The villagers were shocked. "Why?" one asked. "Have you finished your practice?" Jaya smiled sadly. "No." Then he looked toward the road. "I think I am finally beginning it." The monk, traveler, and hermit walked down the mountain together. At the foot of the hill, their paths separated. Jaya would travel toward his daughter's village. He did not know what she would say. She might embrace him. She might close the door. She might forgive him. She might not. He had no control over that. But for the first time, he was willing to meet the truth instead of hiding from it. Before leaving, Jaya took the old letter from the wooden box. He folded it carefully, then placed it inside his robe. The monk looked at him. "You are keeping it?" Jaya nodded. "Yes, but differently." That mattered. Letting go does not always mean throwing something away. Sometimes it means carrying it without letting it carry you. Jaya walked toward the village. The monk and traveler continued in the opposite direction. That evening, they stopped beside a quiet river. The sun was setting. The water reflected gold. For a few minutes, everything seemed perfectly peaceful. The traveler smiled. "I wish this moment could stay." The monk looked at him. There was no criticism in his face, only recognition, because after all the stones, memories, anger, fear, guilt, and loss they had seen, there was one final kind of attachment still waiting, not holding on to pain, holding on to happiness, and sometimes that can disturb peace just as deeply. The next story begins beside that river, with a monk who discovered that even beautiful moments become suffering when we demand that they never end. The hermit had spent years trying to escape his past. Beside the river, the monk discovered another kind of attachment, one that does not look painful at first, the desire to make a beautiful moment stay. The evening was almost perfect. The sun had fallen low behind the hills. Golden light rested on the water. Birds moved quietly between the trees. The traveler sat beside the river and watched everything turn orange. For a few minutes, neither man spoke. Then the traveler smiled. "I wish this moment could stay forever." The monk looked at him. There was nothing wrong with the wish. We have all felt it. A beautiful evening, a meal with people we love, a child sleeping safely beside us, a holiday we do not want to end, a person holding our hand, a body that still feels young and strong. Happiness arrives, and almost immediately the mind begins reaching for rope. Stay. Do not change. Do not end. The monk knew this because many years earlier he had made the same mistake. He had been a young student then. One morning during meditation, something unusual happened. His thoughts became quiet. His breathing became soft. The usual worries disappeared. For the first time, he felt a deep peace that seemed to fill his whole body. There was no fear, no wanting, no struggle, only stillness. When the meditation ended, he opened his eyes and thought one thing: "I want this again." The next morning, he sat down eagerly. He watched his breath. He waited. Nothing happened. His legs hurt. His thoughts wandered. He became annoyed. He tried harder. Still nothing. The next day was the same. Soon, every meditation became a search for the peaceful feeling he had experienced once. Instead of watching what was happening, he compared everything to what had happened before. This is not peaceful enough. My mind was quieter yesterday. Why can I not get back there? The beautiful experience that had once brought peace became the reason he could no longer find it. This is the strange nature of attachment. We can turn even happiness into suffering by demanding its return. The young monk went to his teacher. "I lost something," he said. "What?" "The peace I had." The teacher asked, "Where did it go?" "I do not know." "Then how do you know it belonged to you?" The young monk became confused. "I experienced it." "Yes, so it was mine." The teacher smiled. "You experienced yesterday's sunrise too. Where are you keeping that?" The monk said nothing. The teacher continued. "You are suffering because a pleasant state arose, changed, and passed exactly as all states do." The monk understood the words, but not yet the lesson. "But it was good. Yes. Should I not want good things to continue? You may enjoy them." The teacher looked at him carefully. "But when enjoyment becomes demand, peace becomes fear." That sentence stayed with him, because he began noticing it everywhere. A good meal came. Before it was finished, he wanted another. Someone praised him. He wondered whether they would praise him again. A friend visited. He became sad before the friend had even left because he knew the visit would end. Happiness arrived, carrying its own shadow, the fear of losing happiness. The Buddha taught that pleasant experiences are also impermanent. This can sound sad until we understand what it offers. We do not have to reject joy. We do not have to become cold. We do not have to refuse beautiful things because they will end. We only have to stop asking them for something they cannot. Give permanence. The river beside the monk and traveler kept moving. The traveler reached into the water. He tried to hold some in his palm. For a moment, it stayed. Then it slipped between his fingers. The monk asked, "Can you enjoy the river without stopping it?" "Yes." "Then perhaps happiness is like that." The traveler watched the water. If he closed his hand tightly, less water remained. If he kept it open, the water touched him and continued on. That is a picture of non-attachment, not refusing experience, receiving it without closing around it. We often confuse letting go with not caring, but the open hand still feels the water. It simply does not imprison it. The monk remembered how his teacher had changed his meditation practice. "Tomorrow," the teacher had said, "stop trying to become peaceful. What should I do instead? Notice what is here." The next morning, the young monk sat. Restlessness was there. He noticed it. A bird called outside. He noticed it. His knee hurt. He noticed it. A pleasant feeling appeared. He noticed it. Then it changed. He noticed that too. There was no great experience, no golden stillness, but for the first time in weeks he was not fighting the moment. That itself was peace, not the peace he had been chasing. Something quieter, the peace of not demanding that experience become different. Years later, beside the river, he understood the lesson even more deeply. The traveler said, "So when I am happy, I should remind myself that it will end." Yes, that sounds depressing. Only if you think ending makes something worthless. The monk picked up a flower that had fallen beside the river. Would this flower be more beautiful if it could never change? The traveler thought. Perhaps not. A flower matters partly because it is here now. We stop because it will not always be here. Impermanence does not steal beauty. It asks us to pay attention. When you know the meal will end, taste it. When you know the conversation will end, listen. When you know the people you love will change, look at them. When you know your own body will not remain forever, inhabit it while you can. The problem is not that happiness ends. The problem is that while happiness is here, we are often already afraid of its ending. Then we miss half of it. The sun finally disappeared behind the hill. The golden water became dark. The traveler sighed. There it goes. The monk smiled. Yes. A few moments later, stars began appearing. The traveler looked up. Something new had arrived because the old thing had been allowed to leave. This is another truth about holding on. When we refuse to release what has ended, our hands are too full to receive what comes next. They slept beside the river that night. In the morning, they crossed a wooden bridge and entered another village. Near the village gate stood a woman with her hand closed tightly around a small piece of cloth. She had been standing there for a long time, waiting. The monk noticed her fist immediately. The beggar had once held a gold coin that way, but this woman was not protecting money. Inside her hand was the last thing someone she loved had given her. She knew she needed to continue with her life, but some part of her believed moving forward meant leaving love behind. The monk had learned to let happiness pass. Now he was about to meet a woman who had to learn that opening the hand does not erase what the heart has known. The monk had learned that even happiness becomes suffering when we demand that it remain. The woman beside the village gate was holding something much smaller, a piece of red cloth. Her name was Mina. She had carried the cloth for nearly 4 years. It had once been part of a scarf belonging to her younger sister. They had grown up together, shared a room, shared secrets, argued over small things, borrowed each other's clothes without permission, laughed at things no one else understood. When Mina married and moved to another village, her sister gave her the red scarf. "You always steal my things anyway," she joked. Years later, illness came quickly. Her sister died before Mina could reach home. After the funeral, Mina found the scarf inside an old wooden chest. She cut a small piece from one end. Then she closed her hand around it. She kept it there for days, then weeks. Eventually, carrying it became a habit. When she was afraid, she touched it. When she missed her sister, she touched it. When she felt guilty for laughing, she touched it. When good things happened, she touched it and felt sadness because her sister was not there to see them. The cloth became connected to everything. The monk and traveler met her beneath a tree. She was watching 2 young sisters playing nearby. One chased the other. Both were laughing. Mina watched with tears in her eyes. The monk sat a short distance away. After some time, he asked, "Does watching them bring you joy or pain?" "Both. That is a difficult mixture." She nodded. He noticed her hand. "What are you holding?" Mina hesitated, then opened her fingers slightly. The cloth was faded. Sweat and years of handling had worn the edges thin. "My sister." The monk looked at the cloth. "Your sister?" Mina immediately corrected herself. "Something that belonged to her." The monk nodded. That difference mattered. "What happens if you lose it?" Her hand closed. "I cannot." "Why?" "It is all I have left." The monk had heard these words before. The woman with the broken cup had once said almost the same thing. But grief makes every loss feel unique. And in some ways, it is. No 2 relationships are exactly alike. No teaching makes missing someone disappear. Buddhism does not ask grief to become smaller before it is ready. It asks us to see what we are doing with grief. The monk asked, "What was your sister like?" Mina looked surprised. People usually avoided asking. They thought talking about the dead would make her sad. But she was already sad. She began speaking. Her sister sang loudly while cooking, badly. She hated waking early. She loved sweet fruit. She laughed when nervous. She was terrible at keeping secrets. She once walked several miles in the rain to stay with Mina after Mina lost a baby. As Mina spoke, something changed. Her closed hand relaxed slightly. The monk noticed. "Your sister seems larger than that cloth." Mina looked down. "Yes." "How much of what you just told me is inside your fist?" She understood. None of it. The cloth could remind her, but it could not contain a human life. This is one reason attachment hurts. We take something vast and attach it to something small. A person becomes a photograph. A marriage becomes a ring. Childhood becomes a house. Love becomes an object. Then, when that object changes or disappears, we feel as if the whole world it represented is disappearing too. Mina said, "I know she is not in the cloth." "Your mind knows." The monk looked at her closed hand. "Does your body know?" She began to cry. That was the harder question. Sometimes understanding lives in the head for years before the rest of us catches up. Mina knew her sister was dead. She knew the cloth was only cloth. But her fingers still behaved as if releasing it would cause another loss. The traveler asked, "Have you ever put it down?" "No, not once. Not since the funeral." The monk said, "Then perhaps you do not know what happens when you open your hand." Mina looked frightened. "I know exactly what happens." "What?" "She is gone." The monk answered gently, "She is already gone." Mina closed her eyes. Sometimes freedom begins with the sentence we least want to hear. Reality does not become more true because we finally accept it. It was already true. Acceptance simply stops forcing us to fight it every morning. The monk did not tell her to throw the cloth away. Instead, he asked her to place it on her open palm. That was all. She slowly opened her fingers. The muscles were stiff from holding. The cloth rested there. She stared at it. Now what? Nothing. They sat. Wind moved through the trees. The cloth shifted slightly. Mina quickly caught it. Fear rose. The monk asked, "What happened?" "I thought it would blow away." "And what did you feel?" "Panic." "Notice that." She breathed. This was not really about fabric. It was about the part of her that still believed love could be lost. The monk said, "You have spent 4 years protecting the reminder. Have you also protected what your sister taught you?" Mina looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You said she came to you when you were grieving." "Yes." "Do you go to people who are grieving?" Mina thought. "No, I avoid them. I never know what to say." The monk smiled gently. "Perhaps you have been holding the cloth and dropping the lesson." That went deep. Her sister had been generous, warm, quick to show up. She had made people feel less alone. What if remembering her did not have to mean gripping one object? What if remembrance could become a way of living? Buddhist teaching often turns attention from possession toward action. What we love cannot always remain in form, but its influence can continue through what we become. A teacher dies. The teaching continues in the student. A parent dies. Kindness learned from them moves into another generation. A friend disappears. Something they awakened in us remains available. Mina looked at the sisters playing nearby. One fell. The other immediately ran back and took her hand. Mina smiled. "My sister would have done that." The monk nodded. "And perhaps you can too." Over the following days, Mina practiced opening her hand. At first, only for a few breaths. Then she placed the cloth beside her while she ate. The first meal felt wrong. Then nothing terrible happened. She slept with the cloth on a table instead of inside her hand. She woke during the night and reached for it. She noticed the fear. She breathed. By morning, the cloth was still there, but something else was changing. The cloth was becoming an object again. Precious, meaningful, but an object. One afternoon, an old neighbor came to tell Mina that her husband had died. Normally, Mina would have made an excuse. Grief frightened her because it touched her own. This time she went to the woman's house. She did not know what to say, so she did what her sister had once done. She stayed. She made tea. She sat beside her. That evening, Mina returned home and looked at the red cloth. For the first time in years, remembering her sister brought warmth before pain, not instead of pain, before it. That mattered. A week later, she folded the cloth and placed it inside a small wooden box. The traveler asked, "Are you putting her away?" Mina smiled. "No, I am putting the cloth away." She touched her chest. "The rest is not in the box." This is what opening the hand can teach us. What is truly part of us does not require constant gripping. Love can remain without possession. Memory can remain without punishment. Grief can remain while life begins again. Before the monk and traveler left, Mina gave them food. As they walked away, she stood beneath the same tree. Both hands were open at her sides. They traveled for several days until the road reached a wide river. There was no bridge, only a small ferry. The boatman was late, so the monk and traveler waited beside the water. Then another empty boat came drifting downstream. No person was inside it. The current pushed it gently toward the shore. The traveler stepped forward to stop it. The boat struck another tide boat with a loud sound. For a moment, irritation rose in him. Then he saw that no one was there to blame. The monk smiled. Because sometimes the final thing we must release is not a person, not an object, not even the past. Sometimes it is the belief that everything that disturbs us must have someone behind it. And the empty boat was about to teach the last lesson of their journey. Mina had learned to open her hand. At the river, the traveler was about to learn why sometimes there was never anything to hold in the first place. The empty boat drifted toward them. The current carried it sideways. Then it struck the small ferry tied near the shore. Wood hit wood. The sound was sharp. The traveler jumped. "Careless fool," he said. Then he looked inside the drifting boat. No one was there. His anger disappeared almost immediately. The monk saw this. What changed? The traveler looked at the empty boat. No one is inside. The boat still struck the ferry. Yes, the sound was the same. Yes. Then what happened to your anger? The traveler smiled. I had no one to give it to. The monk sat beside the river. And there, at the end of a long road filled with people holding stones, memories, cups, anger, money, approval, grief, youth, and the past, he told the traveler an old lesson. There was once a man who crossed a river in a small boat. He was enjoying the morning. The water was calm. Then he saw another boat coming directly toward him. At first he waited for it to turn. It did not. He shouted, "Move!" The boat continued. His anger rose. "Are you blind?" Still nothing. The boat struck his. The man stood, furious, ready to insult whoever was responsible. Then he looked. The other boat was empty. The rope that had tied it upstream had broken. The current had carried it toward him. In one moment his anger vanished. Nothing about the collision had changed, only the story. This is how much of our suffering works. Something happens. Then the mind immediately creates a person behind it. They ignored me. They disrespected me. They did this because they do not care. They knew this would hurt me. They wanted to embarrass me. Sometimes these things are true. People do act carelessly. People can be cruel. But sometimes we build intention where there was only human confusion. Someone does not greet us. We think they dislike us. Perhaps they are grieving. Someone answers sharply. We think they have no respect. Perhaps they have not slept. A friend forgets something important. We decide we do not matter. Perhaps their mind is carrying a burden we cannot see. The traveler looked at the empty boat. So I should pretend nobody means harm? No. The monk shook his head. See clearly. That is always the Buddhist instruction. See clearly. Not suspiciously, not blindly, clearly. If someone harms you intentionally, recognize it. Protect yourself when needed. Set boundaries. But do not add intention when you do not know. And even when intention is present, ask what holding anger will do next. The traveler sat beside him. I have spent much of this journey watching people hold things. The monk nodded. The stone, yes. The past, yes. The broken cup, the storm, the apology, the words, the empty bowl, the throne, the coin, the approval, the need to save everyone, the child, the perfect vase, the anger, youth, shame, happiness, the cloth. The traveler looked at the river. Everything was different, and everything was the same. The traveler understood. The object changed, the hand did not, holding on. This is why the Buddha spoke so often about clinging. Our suffering takes many forms, but underneath them is often the same movement. This must stay, this must go, this must become what I want. That should not have happened. They must apologize. I must remain young. I must be loved. I must be right. I must never feel this again. Life keeps moving. The hand keeps closing. Then we wonder why there is pain. The traveler asked, "Does peace mean wanting nothing?" The monk looked at the river. No. Human beings will want. We will prefer. We will hope. We will love. We will make plans. A mother hopes her child returns safely. A farmer hopes for rain. A sick person hopes to recover. There is nothing wrong with the heart leaning toward life. The suffering begins when hope becomes a demand, when love becomes ownership, when preference becomes a condition for peace. When we say, "I can only be okay if life obeys me," life has never promised this. The river does not flow according to our plans. Storms come. People change, bodies age, words are spoken, some apologies arrive, others never do. Some dreams become real, others fall apart. Some people stay for 50 years, some disappear too soon. This is the human realm, not a place where nothing breaks, a place where we can learn how to meet breaking without breaking ourselves every time. The empty boat continued downstream. Soon it was far away. The traveler asked, "What should we hold then?" The monk smiled. "Hold what is here gently." That may be the whole lesson. When love comes, love. When food comes, taste it. When work comes, do it well. When grief comes, allow it to move through you. When happiness comes, enjoy it. When it leaves, do not chase its shadow for years. When someone walks beside you, walk together. When the road separates, bow to what was shared. The traveler looked at his hands. They were empty. He remembered the first monk with the stone. At the beginning of the journey, an empty hand had seemed like losing something. Now it looked different. An empty hand could receive. An empty hand could touch. An empty hand could help someone stand. An empty hand could wave goodbye without believing goodbye erased love. This is why letting go is not emptiness in the hopeless sense. It is space, space for the next breath, the next person, the next morning, the next version of ourselves. The ferry finally arrived. The monk and traveler climbed inside. Halfway across the river, the traveler looked back. The villages behind them were already disappearing into the distance. Somewhere behind those hills, a farmer was planting again. A widow was eating from one bowl. A young monk was doing good without waiting for praise. A mother was learning to love her grown son from a distance. A warrior was waking without his sword beside him. An old rich man was walking slowly through a garden without being ashamed of moving slowly. A hermit was walking toward the daughter he had avoided for 20 years. A woman was living with both hands open. None of them had received a perfect life. That was never the promise. They had received something quieter. The possibility of no longer fighting every change. The possibility of carrying pain without turning it into identity. The possibility of remembering without gripping. The possibility of loving without owning. The possibility of being alive without demanding that life remain still. The ferry reached the other shore. The traveler stepped onto the ground. He looked at the monk. "Is this where the journey ends?" The monk smiled. "No." "Then where do we go?" The monk began walking. "Wherever the next thing asks us to let go." The traveler followed. Behind them, the river continued moving. It did not hold yesterday's water. It did not fear tomorrow's. It simply met the land in front of it and continued. And perhaps peace has always been something like that. Not a life where nothing leaves. A life where we finally stop destroying ourselves trying to make everything stay. The empty boat had. taught the traveler that not every pain needed someone to blame, but the next man they met was still blaming one thing: a closed door. He returned to it every morning. The house stood at the edge of a quiet village. It had once belonged to the woman he loved. Her name was Mira. For 12 years they had shared that house. They planted herbs beside the window. They ate beneath the same lamp. They argued. They forgave. They made plans. Then something changed. Not suddenly. Sometimes endings arrive slowly. A silence grows. A tenderness becomes effort. A conversation gets avoided. Two people continue living beside each other while some invisible distance keeps widening. One morning, Mira told him she was leaving. The man's name was Arun. He thought she was angry. He thought she would return after a few days. She did not. Weeks passed, then months. Mira moved to another town. The house was sold. Another family lived there now. Still, Arun returned. Every morning. He stood in front of the same wooden door. Sometimes he touched it. Sometimes he remembered Mira opening it. Sometimes he imagined hearing her footsteps from inside. The new owners had spoken to him many times. She does not live here anymore. He knew. That was the strange part. He knew. But knowing something and accepting it are not always the same thing. The monk and traveler found Arun standing there before sunrise. The village was still quiet. The monk asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" Arun shook his head. "No." "Then why are you here?" Arun looked at the door. "I do not know." That was perhaps the most honest answer he had given anyone. The traveler asked, "Did someone leave?" Arun nodded. He told them about Mira, about the 12 years, about the final conversation, about how she said she had become tired of trying to repair something that kept breaking. Arun had begged her to stay. She did not. He had sent letters. Some were answered. Most were not. Eventually, she asked him to stop writing. Still, he returned to the old house. "I only stand here," he said. "I do not disturb anyone." The monk asked, "Does standing here bring her closer?" "No." "Does it bring you peace?" "No." "Then what does it give you?" Arun thought. "Hope." The monk looked at the closed door. Hope for what? That somehow it was not really the end. There it was. Sometimes we do not hold on to a person. We hold on to the possibility that the ending is not final. A relationship ends. We keep checking the phone. A friendship changes. We keep returning to old messages. A job is gone. We keep imagining they will call. A season of life closes. We keep standing outside it as if persistence can turn the handle. This is not always love. Sometimes it is refusal. The Buddha taught that suffering grows when we demand that changing things remain the same. Arun had loved Mira. That was real. But now he was asking the memory of love to become a future it could no longer become. The monk said, "A door can be closed without the house being cruel." Arun frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means an ending does not always exist to punish you. Sometimes something is simply finished. Not everything ends because someone failed completely. Not every closed door means we were unworthy. Not every person who leaves becomes an enemy. Sometimes two lives separate. The mind hates this because it wants a reason large enough to explain the pain." Arun said, "But if I accept that it is over, then 12 years become nothing." The monk shook his head. "No. Then what do they become? 12 years. Arun looked confused. The monk continued, "An ending does not erase what happened before it. This is another trap of attachment. We believe if something does not last forever, it was meaningless. But almost nothing lasts forever. A beautiful meal ends. Was it meaningless? A flower dies. Was it never beautiful? A friend walks beside us for 10 years, then life takes them elsewhere. Were those 10 years false? Duration is not the only measure of value. Mira had mattered. Their life had mattered. The ending did not cancel that, but neither did the past give Arun ownership over the future. The monk asked, "What do you remember when you stand here?" "The good days." "Only those?" Arun hesitated. "No." The last year had been painful. They argued often. He had become distant. Mira had asked him to listen. He had promised to change, then return to old habits. He remembered all of it, but after she left, his mind polished the past. It kept the warm evenings and removed the exhaustion. This is something grief can do. We miss not only what existed, we sometimes miss an edited version of it. Arun whispered, "I should have done better. Perhaps. I should have listened. Perhaps. I should have seen what was happening. Perhaps." The monk let the words remain. Then he asked, "Can regret teach you something?" "Yes." "Can it reopen this door?" "No." "Then take the lesson and stop asking regret to do the work of time." Arun looked at the door. For 2 years he had been returning. 2 years of mornings, 2 years of standing where life no longer waited. The monk said, "You keep returning because part of you believes leaving this door means leaving her." Arun's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. What if leaving the door only means leaving the door?" He began to cry. That was the sentence he needed. We attach love to places, to routines, to objects. Then moving forward feels like betrayal. But the heart does not need a physical door to remember. The next morning, Arun returned once more. The monk and traveler went with him. He stood in front of the house. He touched the wood. Then he whispered, "Thank you." Not to the door, to the life behind it, to who he had been, to who Mira had been, to the years that had already given everything they were going to give. Then he stepped back. He did not ask it to open. That mattered. He turned and he walked away. At first, every step felt wrong, then lighter. Not joyful, not yet, but honest. The door remained closed behind him. For the first time, Arun did not look back. This is letting go too. Not saying the past did not matter. Saying the past no longer has to become the future in order to matter. The monk and traveler left the village with him. At a fork in the road, Arun chose another direction. He had heard of work in a town near the sea. He did not know what would happen there. That frightened him. But perhaps uncertainty was better than spending another year at a closed door. The monk and traveler continued east. Later that day, they reached a house surrounded by carefully arranged jars, bundles of grain, folded blankets, and containers of water. A woman moved between them, checking everything twice. Then a third time. Arun had been trying to reopen yesterday. This woman was trying to control tomorrow before it arrived, and fear had turned the future into another kind of prison. The man at the closed door had spent years asking the past to open again. The woman they met next was trying to open doors that did not yet exist. Her name was Tara. She lived in a neat house beside a field of rice. Everything had a place. Bowls were stacked carefully. Money was counted every evening. Food was stored for weeks. Extra candles sat beside the bed. Water jars were always full. If rain was expected, Tara prepared for flooding. If no rain was expected, she still prepared for flooding. People called her responsible. She was. But responsibility was not what kept her awake. Fear did. Tara wanted to know what would happen tomorrow. Would the harvest be good? Would her husband stay healthy? Would her children find work? Would food prices rise? Would a storm come? Would someone she loved die? Would she become sick? Would there be enough money? Would everything be all right? No answer was ever enough, so she planned, then planned for the plan failing, then worried about what she had forgotten to plan for. The monk and traveler arrived one afternoon. Tara welcomed them. She offered tea, but while pouring it, she kept looking toward the sky. "Rain?" the traveler asked. "Maybe. Do you need it?" "Yes." "Then why are you worried? If it rains too much, the field could flood." The traveler smiled. So you need exactly the right rain. Yes. At exactly the right time. Yes. And nothing unexpected must happen. Tara heard how impossible this sounded. She almost laughed. Instead, she said, "Someone has to think ahead." The monk nodded. Thinking ahead is wise. Exactly. But living there is exhausting. Tara stopped. That was the difference she had never noticed. Planning asks, "What can I do today?" Anxiety asks, "How can I guarantee tomorrow?" One can guide action. The other asks for something life has never promised. Certainty. Tara had learned fear early. Her father died suddenly when she was 12. One morning he left for work. By evening he was dead. No warning, no final conversation. Nothing had prepared her. From that day, uncertainty felt dangerous. If terrible things could happen without warning, Tara decided she would never again be unprepared. She watched everything, saved everything, imagined everything. She believed worrying kept disaster away, but worry does not control tomorrow. It only makes us experience tomorrow's pain before tomorrow exists. The monk asked, "Has worrying prevented every painful event in your life?" No. Has useful planning prevented some problems? Yes. Then keep the planning. He paused. Release the part that believes planning can remove uncertainty. Tara sat down. I do not know how. Most of us do not. The human mind does not like open space. Give it an unknown future, and it begins filling the emptiness. What if? What if? What if? Soon the imagined event begins to feel real. The heart races over something that has not happened. The stomach tightens over a conversation that may never occur. Sleep disappears because of a future that exists only as thought. The monk asked Tara to hold her tea bowl. She did. Is it warm? Yes. Can you feel it? Yes. Where is tomorrow? She frowned. I do not know. Can you touch it? No. Can you breathe tomorrow's breath? No. Then begin with the breath you have. This sounds simple. That is why many people ignore it. The present moment is not a magical place where problems disappear. There are bills. There is illness. There are responsibilities. The future requires preparation, but the present is the only place where preparation can happen. We cannot live tomorrow today. We can only act wisely now. Tara began practicing a new question. Whenever fear said, "What if?" she asked, "What is needed now?" What if the harvest fails? What is needed now? Care for the field. Store what can be stored. What if money becomes difficult? Save wisely today. What if I become sick? Care for the body that is here now. What if my children struggle? Teach them, love them, allow them to learn. What if someone dies? That question remained harder. The monk did not soften the truth. Someone would die. Everyone Tara loved was temporary. So was Tara. This was not a reason to love them less. It was a reason to stop spending so much time rehearsing their absence while they were still present. That evening, Tara sat with her husband during dinner. He ate quietly. She looked at his face. For years, she had sometimes watched him and thought, "One day I will lose you." That thought felt like love, but it often prevented her from seeing him now. Fear of future grief had been taking pieces of present love. She reached across the table and touched his hand. He looked surprised. "What is wrong?" "Nothing." She smiled. "I was just noticing you." Her husband laughed. "That is unusual." She laughed too. Something loosened. The next morning, clouds gathered. Tara checked the field. She checked the drainage. Then she caught herself returning again. She stood at the door. The old fear appeared. What if the rain becomes too heavy? She noticed it. Then she watched the rain. Not the imagined flood. The actual rain. Droplets hit the roof. The soil darkened. Birds disappeared beneath trees. The rain became stronger, then softer, then stopped. The field remained. Tara breathed. Not every feared future arrives, and even when difficulty comes, we meet it then. We do not need to suffer it 100 times in advance. The monk and traveler prepared to leave. Tara gave them food for the road. Before they went, she asked, "How do I know everything will be okay?" The monk answered, "You do not." She stared at him. There was no comforting promise after that. At first, the answer frightened her. Then something unexpected happened. It relieved her. She did not have to solve the whole future. She only had to meet what arrived, one day, one breath, one wise action at a time. The monk and traveler continued. By afternoon, they reached a small monastery. Near the gate sat a young monk with anger in his face. A man had insulted him that morning. The words had lasted only seconds, but the monk had carried them for hours. Tara had been suffering because of words tomorrow had never spoken. This monk was suffering because he kept repeating words that had already disappeared into the air. Tara had been carrying tomorrow before it arrived. The monk at the next monastery was carrying someone else's anger long after it should have passed. His name was Nanda. That morning, he had walked into the village to collect food. Most people treated him kindly. A farmer gave rice. An old woman offered fruit. A child bowed. Then Nanda passed a shop. The shopkeeper was arguing with a customer. He was already angry before Nanda appeared, but when he saw the monk, he turned toward him. "You monks are useless," he shouted. Nanda stopped. "You eat food that other people worked for." People nearby turned. The shopkeeper continued, "Lazy men hiding in robes." Nanda said nothing. He walked away. From the outside, he looked calm. Inside, he carried every word home. Useless, lazy, hiding. The insult lasted less than a minute. Nanda replayed it for 6 hours. He imagined what he should have said. He imagined returning. He imagined explaining how hard monastic life could be. He imagined embarrassing the shopkeeper in front of everyone. Then another thought appeared. A good monk should not be angry. Now Nanda carried 2 burdens, the insult and shame for being hurt by it. When the monk and traveler arrived, they found Nanda sweeping the courtyard. He had cleaned the same place several times. The traveler asked, "Are you trying to sweep the earth away?" Nanda looked up. "What?" "You keep sweeping the same spot." Nanda stopped. His body had been in the courtyard. His mind was still at the shop. The older monk asked, "Where are you?" Nanda understood the question. He told them what happened. When he finished, he said, "I did nothing to that man." The monk nodded. "And what is he doing now?" "I do not know." "Is he here?" "No." "Is he still speaking?" "No." "Then who is repeating his words?" Nanda looked at the ground. "I am." There was the lesson. Someone can hurt us once, then we can continue the work for them. This does not mean words are harmless. They are not. The Buddha taught right speech because words can wound deeply. Cruel speech can stay in a person for years. But after the words are spoken, another choice appears. How long will we continue speaking them to ourselves? The monk asked, "If someone brings you a gift and you refuse it, who keeps the gift?" "The person who brought it." "If someone gives you anger, must you accept all of it?" Nanda had heard similar teachings before. They sounded easy when the insult belonged to someone else. Now it felt harder. But the words were about me. Were they? Nanda looked confused. "Of course. Does that man know you?" "No." "Does he know how you live?" "No." "Does he know why you became a monk?" "No." Then perhaps his words told you more about his mind than your life. Nanda became quiet. Not every opinion deserves to become a mirror. This is difficult to remember. Some people speak from pain. Some from misunderstanding, some from jealousy, some from exhaustion, some from one terrible morning. Some criticism contains truth. Wise people listen for it, but other criticism is only noise passing through another person. Attachment takes every word and asks, "What does this say about me?" The monk asked, "Did anyone else speak to you today?" "Yes." "Who?" "The farmer thanked me for visiting his sick father." "Anyone else?" "A woman said my chanting comforted her after her husband died." The monk nodded. "Have you thought about those words for 6 hours?" Nanda looked embarrassed. "No." This is how the mind often behaves. 10 kind words pass through. One cruel word finds a chair. Then we feed it, we replay it, we polish it. By evening, the stranger who spoke for 10 seconds has occupied the entire day. Nanda said, "But everyone heard him." And they may think he was right. Some may. This bothered Nanda more than he wanted to admit. The monk said, "You cannot control every mind." This was the same lesson the young monk seeking approval had once faced. Buddhist teachings return because the mind returns. We keep meeting the same attachment in different clothes. Nanda asked, "So I should never defend myself?" "No. If a lie causes harm, speak truth." The monk continued, "But speak because truth is useful, not because you need every person to think well of you before you can rest. There is a difference. One is wise action, the other is imprisonment inside reputation." That evening, Nanda sat in meditation. The words returned. Useless. Lazy. He felt heat rise. His jaw tightened. Normally, he would begin arguing with the memory. This time, he simply noticed hurt, anger, thought. He returned to his breath. A minute later, the words came back. Again, he noticed. Again, he returned. This is practice. Not forcing the mind to become empty. Not becoming angry because anger appeared. Simply refusing to feed every thought that knocks. The next morning, Nanda walked back into the village. He saw the shopkeeper outside. His body reacted before his mind could speak. Tight chest, warm face, faster breath. The old story appeared. He noticed it. The shopkeeper saw him too. For a moment, neither moved. Then the man looked away. Nanda could have walked over and demanded an apology. He could have avoided the street completely. Instead, he continued toward the market. Then he heard a voice. "Monk." Nanda turned. The shopkeeper looked uncomfortable. "I was angry yesterday." Nanda waited. "I should not have spoken to you that way." Nanda nodded. The man added, "I am sorry." Nanda bowed slightly. "May your day be peaceful." Then he left. Later, the traveler asked, "Did the apology help?" "Yes." "Would you have been able to let go without it?" Nanda thought. "Eventually." That answer mattered. Apologies can heal. But if peace depends completely on them, someone else controls the door. Nanda had carried another man's anger for one day. He did not want to make a habit of it. Before the travelers left, Nanda said, "I thought letting go meant the insult would stop hurting." The monk shook his head. "Sometimes it still hurts." "Then what changes?" "You stop building a home for it." Nanda smiled. The monk and traveler continued. Near sunset, they reached a quiet farm. An old man sat beneath a tree holding a small wooden horse. One wheel was broken. He turned it in his hands. Again, again. The monk recognized regret immediately. Nanda had been carrying another man's words. This father was carrying words he had spoken himself. And for 20 years, he had been trying to return to one evening and take them back. Nanda had carried another person's cruel words for a day. The father beneath the tree had carried his own for 20 years. His name was Hari. He was nearly 70. His hands were rough, his back bent slightly from decades in the fields. His wife had died years earlier. His only son lived in another town. The villagers knew Hari as a quiet man. They did not know how much noise lived inside him. Every evening, Hari opened a wooden box. Inside was a toy horse. It had been carved badly. Its legs were uneven. One wheel was broken. Hari picked it up. Then he returned to the same memory. His son had been 8 years old. The boy spent several days carving the horse. He had never made anything like it before. When it was finished, he ran toward his father with excitement. "I made this for you." Hari remembered the exact look in his son's eyes. He also remembered his own exhaustion. The harvest had been poor. His wife was sick. They owed money. He had worked since before sunrise. The boy held out the horse. Hari looked at it, and without thinking, he said, "Why do you waste time making useless things?" The child's face changed. That was the moment Hari had carried for 20 years. His son did not shout. He did not cry. He simply lowered the horse. "Oh." Then he walked away. Later, Hari found the toy outside. One wheel was broken. He picked it up. He told himself he would apologize the next morning. Morning came. Pride stopped him. Then work became busy. Then another day passed. Then a week. The longer he waited, the harder the apology became. Years passed. His son grew older. Their relationship became distant. When the boy became a man, he moved away. They still saw each other sometimes. They spoke, but never deeply. Hari became convinced that everything had begun with the wooden horse. The monk and traveler found him holding it. The traveler asked, "What is that?" "My failure." The monk looked at the toy. "It looks like a horse." Hari did not smile. He told them the story. When he finished, his eyes were wet. "I would give anything to return to that evening." The monk asked, "What would you do?" "I would take the horse. I would tell him I loved it. I would thank him. I would never say what I said." The monk nodded. "You have returned many times." Hari looked confused. "In your mind?" "Yes." "Has it changed the evening?" "No." "Then your mind has been trying to do impossible work." This is what regret does when we cling to it. It turns backward. It says, "If only. If only I had stayed. If only I had called. If only I had listened. If only I had not said those words." There can be wisdom inside regret. It shows us where our actions did not match who we wanted to be. But once the lesson is known, regret often becomes punishment. We keep returning to a closed moment as if enough suffering will make the door open. Hari said, "I deserve to feel bad." "Why?" "Because I hurt him." The monk nodded. "You did." Hari seemed surprised. He had expected comfort. The monk continued, "But does hurting yourself now heal him then?" Hari looked at the toy. "No." "Then perhaps suffering is not the same as responsibility. That distinction is important. Sometimes we believe guilt proves we are good. If I stop feeling terrible, maybe I did not care enough. So we keep punishing ourselves. But pain without action can become another form of hiding." The monk asked, "Did you apologize?" Hari looked away. "Not properly." "Why?" "It has been too long." "Does time make the truth less true?" "No. He may not remember. He might. He may remember very well." Hari swallowed. "That is what I fear." There it was. Private regret had become safer than real repair. Inside his own mind, Hari could control everything. He could apologize perfectly. He could imagine his son forgiving him. Real life carried risk. His son might still be hurt. He might be angry. He might say, "Yes, Father, that changed something in me." Hari did not want to hear that. So instead, he stayed beneath the tree, holding a broken horse, punishing himself where no one else could see. The monk asked, "Were you a cruel father every day?" Hari looked up. "No." "Did you feed your son?" "Yes." "Protect him?" "Yes." "Teach him to work?" "Yes." "Sit beside him when he was sick?" Hari's eyes softened. "Yes." "Did you love him?" "More than anything." Then why have you made one terrible moment larger than the whole, Father? Hari looked at the horse. The question reached him. This is something human beings do with regret. We reduce our entire life to one failure. I failed my marriage. Therefore, I was nothing but a bad husband. I shouted at my child. Therefore, I was only harmful. I made a foolish choice. Therefore, I am a fool. One mistake becomes the whole vase. One crack becomes the whole person. Buddhist wisdom asks for clear seeing. Clear seeing includes what we did wrong, but it also refuses to make that wrong into a permanent self. Hari whispered, I was not the man I should have been. The monk answered, none of us always are. That sounds too easy. It is not. The monk looked at him. Because now you must become the man who responds differently. Regret becomes useful when it moves forward. If we lied, tell the truth now. If we were cruel, practice kindness now. If we abandoned someone, show up where we still can. If repair is possible, attempt it. If repair is impossible, let the lesson change the way we live. Hari asked, and if he does not forgive me? You cannot control that. The same lesson again. We can choose our action. We cannot own the result. 2 days later, Hari began the journey to his son's town. The monk and traveler went with him. The closer they came, the quieter Hari became. At the final road, he almost stopped. I cannot do this. The monk looked at him. You have been doing the harder thing for 20 years. What? Carrying it. Hari breathed deeply. Then he walked. His son's house stood near the river. Hari knocked. A man in his 40s opened the door. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the son smiled. Father? Hari entered. Tea was prepared. They spoke about ordinary things at first. Weather, work, the road. Hari almost left without saying anything. Then he reached into his bag. He placed the wooden horse on the table. His son stared. You still have that? Hari's hands shook. Yes. Silence. Hari forced himself to continue. You gave me this with love. His son looked at him. I was tired and angry. I called it useless. I watched your face change. And I did not apologize. His voice broke. I have regretted that for 20 years. I am sorry. His son remained still. Hari did not explain. He did not defend himself. He let the apology stand. Finally, his son touched the broken wheel. I remember that day. Hari closed his eyes. Then the son continued. It hurt. I know. But father... Hari looked up. That is not the only thing I remember. His son began telling stories. Hari carrying him home after he fell from a tree. Hari giving him the larger bowl when food was scarce. Hari sitting beside his bed during fever. Hari teaching him to swim. Hari walking miles to buy medicine for his mother. The wooden horse was part of the story, not the whole story. Hari began crying. For 20 years, he had believed one moment had swallowed everything. His son had remembered a larger life. The son repaired the broken wheel. Then he placed the horse on a shelf. The past remained unchanged, but something between them had changed now. That was enough. The monk and traveler left the town the next morning. Hari stayed with his son. As they walked, the traveler looked back at the house. Do you think Hari has forgiven himself? Maybe not completely. Then what changed? He stopped using regret as a place to hide. They continued until night. Soon a small temple appeared beside the road. Near its entrance, an old lantern was burning. The flame was weak. An elderly monk sat beside it, watching the last oil disappear. Hari had wanted to change one moment from 20 years ago. The old monk beside the lantern wanted to stop one final moment from arriving. And the dying flame was about to teach them what every story on the road had been leading toward. Nothing stays because we demand that it stay. And peace begins when we finally stop asking it to. These stories were never really about stones, broken cups, old doors, empty bowls, gold coins, or dying lanterns. They were about the things we carry inside, the apology that never came, the person who left, the mistake we cannot forgive, the future we keep trying to control, the version of life we still wish had happened. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that peace does not come from making everything stay. It comes from learning how to love without gripping, remember without suffering twice, and release what life has already carried away. Maybe there is something in your own life your hand is still closed around. If there is, leave one word in the comments that describes what you are ready to release. And if these stories gave you even one quiet moment of clarity, subscribe and continue walking this path with us.